Good morning. I call this meeting of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors to order for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all 5 supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. Additionally, before we begin, any members of the public that wish to provide oral testimony during today's meeting, please review the instructions posted on the Clerk of the Board's webpage. I'll remind members of the public that have requested to speak to wait to dial into the meeting until the item is called. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Jacob?
Here.
Supervisor Gaspar? Supervisor Gaspar? Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher here.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Here.
Chairman Cox?
Here. We are honored this morning to have with us Pastor Jim Heydrich from the Firewheel Church. And if we could ask the pastor to please lead us in the invocation at this time, if you would, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We love this great county of San Diego. And I was awoken at 2:55 this morning with an owl outside of my window this morning. And I felt like it was something that God was speaking to me about. And what that means to me is owls prophetically are a sign of wisdom. And because it was nighttime, I felt like it was darkness. So wisdom in darkness. But if you could bow your hearts with me and join me in prayer, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Lord Almighty, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you that you're with us, you're for us, that you've granted to all of these on this call a spirit of grace and wisdom in this time and this season for this region of San Diego County. Dear Lord Almighty, we thank you for your good spirit that is upon each one of us. And we speak over this county that your goodness will prevail in every way. Lord, we speak over COVID-19 and we speak your love and your faithfulness over the doctors, nurses, hospital administration, the plans and the strategies for this administration and the decisions that need to be made. I declare the wisdom of God Almighty over them. Thank you that our hearts are being stirred up, that you're bringing changes and you're speaking to us in ways that are very significant in this time and this season. I declare that businesses in San Diego County will be blessed in this upcoming season, that the military and the police in this region and all law enforcement agencies and fire departments and public servants are blessed by you, that you're bringing goodness and faithfulness to them in this season. We thank you that Black Lives Matter, that you're giving us a spirit of understanding to deal with racism issues that will actually bring significant changes. Please give us a spirit of understanding. Dear Lord Almighty, we pray for spiritual awakening and revival as 110 churches were gathered on this past Saturday in 11 different locations across the county. These faith communities, these faith leaders, there was 10,000 people gathered in 11 different locations. And we're grateful for the communities of faith. God, would you use them as a catalytic movement in this county? I pray for wisdom and discernment for all that are on this phone call, and we declare a shift over this region that you're bringing from heaven, O Lord Almighty. And we declare Proverbs 21:5 that the plans of the diligent lead surely to advantage. And I declare the advantage of heaven over those that can hear the sound of my voice, that what is in San Diego County will be exported to other parts of the United States and in other parts of the world, that your favor is upon America's finest city. Dear Lord Almighty, we thank you that your favor is upon San Diego, California, and the surrounding areas, that you've called us for such a time as this to shine your light and to walk in your faithfulness. And we declare all of this and speak to the spirit of wisdom and the spirit of understanding for awakening of all lives in this territory to be manifest and realized in beautiful ways for this beautiful region of San Diego County, we pray. And it's in your name we pray, O Lord Almighty. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Heydrich, thank you very much for the invocation this morning. It's very inspiring. And again, we appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. God bless you all.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll go ahead and start now with the presentation of proclamations. And this is a little bit different process than we normally use, but the first proclamation is going to be presented by myself and Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, which is honoring Robert Card, who is our Air Pollution Control District Director, who's retiring. And I'm not sure whether he's calling in or whether he's on a Zoom call, but I'll go ahead and get started with the first part of the proclamation, and I'll ask my colleague, Supervisor Fletcher, to cover the last part of the proclamation. Whereas Robert Card has diligently served the public for more than 42 years, including 39 years at 4 different air pollution control agencies in 2 states, and he's retiring as the Air Pollution Control District Officer for San Diego County. Robert Card has demonstrated an unwavering dedication to improving air quality and public health in states, regions, and communities that he has served in. For the past 12 years, Robert Card has faithfully served as the Air Pollution Control District Officer of San Diego County and has made substantial improvements to our air quality by creating and implementing comprehensive air pollution control programs and educational opportunities for business. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. While we were doing proclamations virtually now, I want to extend this formal congratulations to Bob Card on his retirement from the Air Pollution Control District last week. Bob, it's been great to work with you over the last year and a half on some of the major air pollution control initiatives that will help San Diego address our air quality and our environmental justice issues. I know working together, we launched our annual Clean Air for All grant campaign to bring more state funding to clean up our most polluted neighborhoods. We launched the Clean Cars for All, securing cap and trade funding from the California Air Resources Board to launch an electric vehicle program for low-income San Diegans. We supported our Portside environmental justice community through mobile air quality monitoring. Of course, the infamous collection of license plate reader data, which is going to help us strategically and thoughtfully tackle issues of air quality in our district, and so much else we did around toxic hotspots, around working together with our AB 617 communities. I know I would often see you and your folks out there late at night at the AB 617 steering committee hearings, really doing a good job. And so I want to work with you. I've enjoyed working with you. I want to thank you for your service and wish you all of the best in the future. And I hope there are a lot of ham radio conventions and conversations in your future. Wishing you all the best, Bob. Thank you.
Is Bob online by any chance?
I am indeed. Chairman Cox, Supervisor Fletcher, and board members, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to work for you. And it's time to retire, of course, like I did. But the 12 years has gone in a blink of an eye. With your tremendous support, I know the APCD team will continue to clean up the air, to meet all challenges as they come forward. And really, it means a better quality of life for everyone. But again, that's because of your support. We couldn't do it without you. and it's been an honor and a privilege to work for you. And with that, thank you.
Well, Bob, we again thank you so much for your dedication over these last 12 years serving the county of San Diego. And Bob, we wish you the best in your retirement. You take care.
Thank you very much. And one minor comment in regard to the ham radio one, it's social distancing at its earliest in the world.
Well said, well said. We will move on now to the second presentation today, which is honoring the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. And to present that proclamation will be Supervisor Nathan Fletcher to Buki Domingos. Nathan, I think you're on.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Recent events have led to an overwhelming public outcry, emphasizing the importance of Black lives and racial justice. And we are reminded that the injustices we are seeing today did not magically appear overnight, and they are not unique to San Diego. What we are seeing in the marginalization and discrimination has been a reality for Black and brown Americans for centuries. They are the product of systemic racism, of barriers that have been constructed that keep people of color out of decision-making processes and out of the opportunity for the simple cry for fairness. Fair access to healthcare, fair access to housing, fair access to life, and the opportunity to live a better future. As the public has come together to speak with one voice and call for justice and reform, the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego has played an instrumental role in mobilizing San Diegans to advocate for racial justice, equity, and criminal justice reforms. For years, the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego has provided a united front for advocacy and action against all forms of discrimination, especially those disproportionately targeting the Black and brown communities in San Diego County. They have been at the forefront of implementing structural change in our criminal justice system and generating dialogue to engage community members in forms of transformative justice, and have been a focal point in regional advocacy for efforts aimed at dismantling systematic racism, discrimination, and oppression. By working with local organizations, community members, civic leaders, and elected officials, the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego has left an incredible mark on our region's regional advocacy efforts, and we are truly grateful for their leadership, their partnership, and their service as we all come together to perform meaningful reforms right here in San Diego County. Therefore, it is my pleasure to present the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego with a proclamation recognizing all of their advocacy efforts and declare this 23rd day of June 2020 to be Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego Day throughout San Diego County. I would now like to invite Buki Domingos, founder of the Racial Justice Coalition, to say a few words.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher, and it is an honor to accept this on behalf of the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. We thank all our grassroots organizations that have worked with us to achieve our goal of ending the corrected restraint in San Diego and its counties. And we appreciate the honor that has been bestowed upon us today, and would like to use this to do what we do best and put in a plug for the 3 demands that Nathan Fletcher will be bringing up this morning at 9 a.m. and encourage other supervisor members to vote in favor of change for the Black and brown communities, because mental health is an issue in our communities. Race and equity is an issue in our communities. And we thank you all very much as we strive towards achieving racial justice for San Diego, its counties, and the citizens of San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, Buki.
Good. Thank you, Supervisor, and congratulations, Buki. We'll move on now to public communications. It's my understanding that we have 4 different public communications, including one which will be given orally by phone, and then 3 written communications. And I'll ask our clerk of the board, Andrew Potter, to go ahead and take the phone-in call first, and then the 3 written communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first individual, Christopher Garrett, as you noted, requested to address the board telephonically. He'll have 2 minutes to address the board. Mr. Garrett, if you could please begin your comments.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Cox and members of the board. I'll be very brief. I'm Chris Garrett, Latham & Watkins, 12670 High Bluff Drive. I'd like to call the board's attention to the letter I sent last Friday. And in summary, in the letter, we're asking the board to do 4 things. Get an audit of the past project approvals the board has granted in the past 2 years that violate the Court of Appeals' recent ruling on greenhouse gas mitigation. Secondly, we'd like to ask the board to ask the staff to stop destroying or withholding documents on proposed development projects, including stopping the 60-day auto-delete program and releasing the documents on fire safety that they're continuing to withhold from us. You should be getting a ruling from the Court of Appeal on this in August, but I don't think you should wait for the court to rule. Third, we'd like to ask the board to ask the county staff to follow the board's procedures for retention of CEQA consultants and stop letting the developers completely control the CEQA consultants for county projects. Finally, we'd like to ask the board to ask planning commissioners not to involve themselves personally in litigation regarding withholding of county documents from the public. Thank you for your time. I know you have a busy agenda. I appreciate the consideration.
Mr. Chairman, there are 3 comments submitted by the public on non-agenda items that I'll read into the record. The first one is from Barbara Gordon. It reads, California needs to end sale of all flavored tobacco products with no exemptions. I urge supervisors to send a letter in support of SB 793, which will end the sale of flavored products as the tobacco industry targets youth. Over 5.3 million kids in the U.S. now use e-cigarettes. That 27.5% of high school students used an e-cigarette in 2019. 97% of teens e-cigarette users report using a flavored product. Ending sale of flavored e-cigarettes will eliminate a major source of e-cigs for youth. The second comment is from Kelly McCormick. It reads, as a mother and youth volunteer, I urge you to support SB 793, prohibiting store sales of all flavored tobacco products statewide, including flavored chew, snuff, hookah, and e-liquids. Tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable death and disease, yet tobacco companies prey on teens. Senator Jerry Hill correctly stated, there is no reason the most deadly product on earth needs to have a candy flavor. Please stop big tobacco from addicting our children. The final comment was submitted by Mark Dillon. He submitted a letter that exceeded the 500-word limit that is provided in any comment, so I'll read the first 500 words. The full letter has been distributed to the board and posted online. It reads, I will respond to comments that Golden Door Properties, LLC, and its law firm, Latham & Watkins, LLP, submitted to the board for the upcoming public communications portion of the board's June 23rd, 2020 public meeting. I submit these comments on my own behalf as a lawyer with offices in Carlsbad. Golden Door, supported by Latham & Watkins, LLP, represents themselves as jointly concerned over greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions, and vehicle miles traveled. However, 2 facts make their concerns difficult to stomach. First, Golden Door has spent considerable time, effort, and money to scuttle development near its exclusive spa facilities to protect its own business interests, with financial support from its out-of-state hedge fund owner and/or supporter. Their actions are not likely due to their altruistic concerns over GHG emissions and vehicle miles traveled. Second, one consequence of Golden Door's actions is to frustrate the county's effort to add housing, which leads to increased GHG emissions and vehicle miles traveled by San Diego's lower and middle income working families, forced to commute each day from Riverside County to their jobs in San Diego County. California's housing crisis is real, discriminatory, and worsens climate change. To support this last point, the San Diego Regional Chambers published a recent study concluding that more than 53,000 people commute each day from Riverside County to their workplaces in San Diego County, adding some 102 miles and approximately 2 hours to their daily commute. These commutes add each year some 400,000 metric tons of GHG emissions and 1.3 billion vehicle miles traveled. County residents also waste an estimated 26 million hours per year sitting in their cars away from their families. The housing crisis is not limited to commuting. We are displacing and redirecting population to other states, including our kids and grandkids. Elected leaders in Sacramento have acknowledged an additional consequence of the state's cumulative housing shortage is a significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions caused by the displacement and redirection of populations to states with greater housing opportunities, particularly working and middle-class households. Further, the housing crisis threatens the economic, environmental, and social quality of life for California and San Diego County. When Californians have access to safe and affordable housing, they have more money for food and health care. They are less likely to become homeless and in need of government-subsidized services. Their children do better in school, and businesses have an easier time recruiting and retaining employees. The statewide and county housing crisis harms lower and middle-income families and minorities the most. Elected leaders in Sacramento have confirmed that the housing crisis has resulted in discrimination against low-income and minority households. Unfortunately, entrenched special interests like Golden Door and others have blocked the county's meaningful efforts to boost housing production, promote affordable housing, and establish an array of housing options that enhance opportunities for San Diego residents of all income levels to achieve home ownerships. The remaining e-comments posted under non-agenda public communication were related to items on today's agenda. Those comments have been distributed to the board and will be filed with the appropriate agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. That completes our public communication. We'll move on to the approval of the statement of proceedings in the minutes for the regular meeting of June 2nd, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Jacobs, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Chairman Cox.
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob.
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar.
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond.
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
The next item on the agenda is the formation of the consent calendar. All items on our agenda will be considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion unless there's a desire on the part of the public or members of the board to pull items for further discussion. Let me start off by asking the clerk at the board if there's items that have been pulled by the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 1 has been pulled by the public. Item 4 has been pulled by the public. Item 8 has been withdrawn at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. Item 16 has been pulled by the public. Item 19 is noted as a presentation item, but there are no requests to speak in this item, so this item may go in consent unless pulled by a board member for discussion. Item 26 has been pulled by the public. Item 27 has been pulled by the public. And item 8 has been pulled by the public.
You mean item 28, right?
And 28, yes.
Okay.
Item 29 on the regular agenda, as well as item 1 on the In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority, are closed session matters that will be considered at the conclusion of the board's public session. And item 1 on the County of San Diego Air Pollution Control Board has been withdrawn at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. This item related to item 8, which was withdrawn. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda may be placed in the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
Okay, let me start off by asking Supervisor Jacob if she has any items that she would like to pull or to make comments on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 3 items. Item number 10 first, I'd like to recognize county staff for their work on this land acquisition. This is the Russell property in Ramona, and it'll be used for affordable senior housing, which will be a key piece in building the Ramona Intergenerational Community Campus, otherwise known as the RIC. We watched this concept grow into reality, and I know many community members in Ramona are looking forward to the day that they can visit the RIC to receive services, connect with resources, or visit their loved ones in this new senior housing project. Many thanks to all those in the Department of General Services, but particularly Jody Mays for your great work. Thank you. Item number 14 is a cost-sharing agreement with the City of San Diego to reopen regional lakes and reservoirs. And let me just tell you how this came about and what we want to do. I first want to thank Vice Chairman Desmond for his partnership in bringing this item forward with me. The COVID-19 situation has made it very challenging, as we all know, in so many different ways. But I think there's some common ground when it comes to looking for additional recreational outlets that the public can enjoy in a safe and a healthy manner. And like many jurisdictions in the COVID-19 era, the City of San Diego is faced with financial challenges, just like us, due to increased costs to ensure safe activities into the future. They had to make the tough decisions to open only 3 lakes initially and keep the remaining lakes closed that they own. In fact, the majority of the lakes that remain closed are in my district: Lake Barrett, San Vicente, El Capitan, Lake Sutherland, which is also half in District 5, and also Lake Hodges, which I believe is in District 3. I started hearing from fishermen and boaters some time ago from throughout the region that were impacted by these lakes being closed. And after that, I quickly realized that the importance of getting these lakes open is not just for the fishermen, but it's for all the businesses that are associated with fishing and those activities that take place on the lakes. So realizing the importance of getting the lakes open, and to that end, started working with the mayor's office a few months ago. And the mayor's office, I have to say, was great to work with on this issue, and we finally came up with a plan. and that's what's before the board today. They needed more time to prepare a cost study to increase fees to support keeping the lakes open. So here's the plan, and it's only on an interim basis, and it's one-time money. The action today is a cost-sharing agreement with the City of San Diego, which involves a one-time cost for 6 months only to allow the City of San Diego to implement COVID-19 measures to safely reopen our region's lakes. The money used for this action will come from the CARES Act and will not impact the county's general fund. In the end, I believe this is a win-win for everyone. The city has provided additional time to prepare for their fee study. The county protects the communities and businesses surrounding the lakes. The fishing and boating industry get their economic engine back running, and the general public are provided additional recreational activities. Our lakes and reservoirs, frankly, are some of the most beautiful and natural resources in our region. So the action today will make sure that we have people that are able to enjoy them as they were meant to be. I want to give a shout out and a thank you, especially to Mayor Faulconer, Councilman Scott Sherman, and Mayor Steve Voss with the City of Poway for all their contributions to this effort. And I hope the board will support the action. And then finally, on item number 19, I would like to add a recommendation to refer to budget $12.5 million for the Lakeside Equestrian Center and $4.2 million for the Julian Library Community Room. And with that, I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion from Supervisor Jacob. We'll move on now to Supervisor Gaspar for her comments.
Second the consent calendar. I have no further comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, move on now to Supervisor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no items to pull. I do want to comment briefly on agenda item number 3. I'm appreciative of the additional CARES Act funding coming in for CDGB, ESG, and HOPWA, 3 important programs that protect vulnerable San Diegans. I am particularly supportive of the $162,000 that will be used as a rental subsidy program. We know that interventions like rental subsidies work. These interventions are extremely effective at preventing people from falling into homelessness, and similarly extremely effective at getting people out of homeless. This is why a number of months ago I brought forward the idea of a flexible housing subsidy pool last year. After several returns to the board, we voted to contribute $400,000 to create the regional task force on the homeless pool with other partners to do this countywide. And so I'm happy to see us as a board fully embracing rental subsidies and see us continue to dedicate money to this important program. And I just commend everyone for their support of this effort.
Thank you, Supervisor. We'll move on now to Vice Chair Jim Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got several comments. I'll try to be brief here. First of all, on item 7, this is the Ryan White funding and the HIV/AIDS service grant funding. Just wanted to compliment and commend staff for the work that they're doing with the Getting to Zero campaign. HIV and AIDS was almost an automatic death sentence a long time ago, and many lives were lost due to the virus. It's actually been jaw-dropping to see the research and treatment protocols that have been developed over the last 35 years, and it's a tribute to our county to be the most successful jurisdiction for this viral suppression in the nation. So that's on item 7. Item 12, this is fostering academic success in education. You may be talking to this yourself, Mr. Chair, but I wanted to commend you for your ongoing effort in support of foster youth. Foster youth are our responsibility, and I'm fully on board to continue and help this vulnerable population. Thank you very much. Item 14 that Supervisor Jacob talked about, this is the cost sharing program of the county lakes. I just want to thank Supervisor Jacob for asking me to partner with this on the item. She read off all of the highlights, and I appreciate that effort. On item 19, this is on consent. I'd like to register a no vote on item 19. I do not agree that some of these additional projects should be spent using reserves. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Desmond. I have no items to pull, but I do have a comment on item 12, which is fostering academic success in education pilot program. It's my pleasure to bring this item forward in partnership with the Sweetwater Union High School District. In my State of the County address earlier this year, I mentioned creating a program called Fostering Academic Success in Education, or FASS, that would focus on improving the educational outcomes of foster youth. The saying goes, education is the greatest equalizer. If we believe that we need to take a second look at foster youth in our care who have underperformed for a very long time, as a former teacher and the son of two teachers, I hold this value near and dear to my heart. All youth should have the opportunity to succeed. Foster youth face incredible obstacles in educational success, and the impact of that trauma follows them to school, work, and other areas of their lives. Over time, it becomes difficult to learn and grow beyond their adverse childhood experiences. There is nothing wrong with these youth. It's the system that either supports or inhibits a child from reaching their fullest potential. That's why close collaboration between schools in our county are so important. I began my teaching career in the Sweetwater Union High School District and can think of no better place to start this work. For this pilot, we will work closely with schools to provide services and supports to youth and families on site within school districts to improve educational outcomes for foster youth. Each youth will have a regular social worker and an educational social worker to track progress, communicate with the family, and connect them to the resources to support healthy development. They will work in tandem with schools to create educational plans and troubleshoot programs, or problems, I should say, in real time. San Diego County is rich with resources for youth in foster care. Sometimes it's not about infusing new resources, but rather using what we already have more effectively. I'm proud to bring this item forward and hope that this pilot will highlight some best practices for expansion to other areas of our county. So with that, I will ask the clerk to please identify those items we'll be voting on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board will be discussing items 1, 4, 16, 26, 27, and 28. Items 29 on the regular agenda, as well as item 1 on the In-Home Supportive Services Public Authority, are closed session matters. All the remaining items on the Board of Supervisors agenda are on the consent calendar for your board's consideration.
Very good, and we do have a motion from Supervisor Jacob, seconded by Supervisor Gaspar. So if the clerk would please call the roll.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Did you say I had item 15 was pulled? Did you say it was item 16 was pulled?
That's correct, Vice Chairman Desmond. Item 16.
Item 16. Okay, I apologize. I had the wrong one. Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And I'll note for the record that the motion includes the additional recommendation for item 19. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye with a no on item 19.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye, noting for the record the Vice Chairman Desmond voted no on item 19.
Okay, as we proceed into those items pulled from the consent calendar, here's what I'm going to propose that we do this morning. We will hear item 1 first. We have one speaker, as I understand that item. They will then go to item number 16, where we have one speaker. We'll deal with item 4, which at this point we have 83 speakers and a staff presentation. We'll break for an hour for lunch, and then we'll come back. Hopefully, I would like to say at 1 o'clock, but I think we'll gauge that based upon when we finish up in the morning, based on the testimony on the other 3 items. And then at that time, we will hear items 26, 27, and 28. And then we'll follow up with closed session. So if the clerk would please go ahead and call up the speaker on item 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're just waiting for that individual to call in at this moment. Item
Why don't we go ahead and deal with item 16 first, and if that speaker is online.
Okay, we're waiting for the speaker for item 16 to call in as well.
Well, how long should we wait? If neither one of those speakers are ready to go, then I guess we will move on to item 4, at least, and hear the staff presentation. And if those two speakers call in, we can pick them up after the staff presentation on item 4.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So is the staff prepared to make their presentation on item 4?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think Andrew has some opening comments he wants to make about item 4, and then we'll move straight into the presentation with Don Stoyer. Andrew?
Thank you, Helen. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you, and you will be muted until it is your turn to speak.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and members of the board. Over the past several weeks, we've continued to work on all fronts to concurrently prevent the spread of coronavirus and support reopening our region. Our testing efforts have increased substantially. Self-scheduling is now available to residents, and there are a total of 23 county-sponsored, supported, free testing sites this week alone. And we're particularly proud of the 7-day average of the total number of tests conducted daily has risen substantially. As of June 21st, our 7-day average was 6,867 tests performed day. In addition, all hospitals report that they currently have a buffer of 14 days of PPE and other supplies. Our Medical Operations Center is working with healthcare partners to expand the preparedness of PPE cache from 14 days to 21 days. And we continue to support Imperial County, as over 178 patients have been transferred to San Diego County hospitals since early April. This is nearly half the total number of transferred patients from the Imperial County area. Our reopening team has been focusing on translating the state guidance, advising businesses, sectors, and industry associations, and preparing them to safely open. They recently launched Reopening webpage, which serves as an excellent source of information and details on the county's reopening efforts and how businesses and sectors can reopen safely. This webpage has been well received as it features clear and concise information and resources for all sectors that are open or soon will be open, as well as information on those that remain closed. In fact, since our last visit to the board, several new sectors, including gyms and fitness facilities, outdoor recreation, including charter boat operations, and family entertainment, including bowling alleys and movie theaters, have reopened. This reopening team has been a valuable source of information and guidance to our community partners. And because of the momentum behind reopening, our sector calls remain a popular conduit of information. At least 13 calls are hosted weekly, continuing to advise and inform and receive feedback from our communities. At the request of Supervisor Desmond at the last board meeting, we begin our update today with an overview of our efforts to support some of our most vulnerable residents. In addition, our Public Health Officer, Dr. Wilma Wooten, will provide a public health update and will touch on some of our reopening efforts. Lastly, with the end of the fiscal year approaching, the finance section has been exploring sufficient appropriations from CARES Act funding to cover costs associated with COVID-19 response. Andy Pease, our Incident Command Finance Chief, will be providing a brief update today as well. Without further ado, I'll welcome Dr. Wooten to give an update on our current statistics. Dr. Wooten, take it away.
Thank you, Don. Good morning, Chairman Cox and members of the board. As Don mentioned, at the last board meeting, Supervisor Desmond asked for a presentation on COVID-19 efforts related to vulnerable populations. The next 10 slides will provide an overview of the various populations considered to be vulnerable and at risk. By definition, vulnerable populations or groups and communities at a higher risk for poor health as a result of the barriers they experience to social, economic, political, and environmental resources, as well as limitations due to illness or disability. In early June, the county prepared for reopening, and per the state's attestation requirements and containment plan, it was mandatory to include protective measures for vulnerable populations. These groups included congregate or long-term care facilities, correctional facilities, and persons experiencing homelessness, as well as additional vulnerable populations that include children, older adults, persons with disabilities, and persons with underlying medical conditions. There are also other at-risk populations as identified in the county's priority testing guidelines established in early April. These include persons with HIV, persons in rural areas, diverse racial and ethnic groups, or people of color, including Native Americans. The next slide shows the licensing and regulatory bodies of the various long-term care facilities and the numbers present in San Diego. The 86 skilled nursing facilities and the 96 intermediate care facilities are regulated by the California Department of Public Health Services, or rather the Department of Public Health. While the 588 residential care facilities for the elderly and the 533 adult residential facilities are regulated by the California Department of Social Services. Long-term care facilities are a critical component of our healthcare system. They are unique as they serve as both healthcare providers and as full-time homes for most of our vulnerable citizens. Long-term care facilities include skilled nursing facilities and non-skilled nursing facilities, which include intermediate care, residential care, and adult residential facilities. Given these high-risk populations, the county has made concerted efforts to support these facilities and their vulnerable populations served. On April 10th, the county formed its long-term care facilities task force focused on meeting the needs of this population. The task force has now grown to include several diverse organizations from this sector, including skilled nursing facilities and a sector that has been developed to support the 86 SNFs in San Diego County held as needed. Regarding education and outreach, there are two sector telebriefings regularly scheduled. One is for long-term care and residential care facilities, which is scheduled every other Friday, and the other is for older adult and disability service providers, which is scheduled the third Friday of each month. To support the telebriefings, the county has a resource webpage dedicated to this specific sector. Several letters which detail resources, guidance, and offer additional support from the county are sent to long-term care facilities on a routine basis and beginning in early March. On March 6th, the county developed a guidance document, recommendations for the prevention and control of COVID-19 in congregate facilities to specifically support outbreaks. The county deploys a response or strike team to long-term care facilities experiencing outbreaks to provide tailored infection prevention and control guidance and testing support. The county has responded to 885 requests for PPE supplies from these facilities. Engagement surveys are routinely sent out to the facilities to solicit information regarding staffing and other resources. Facilities receive weekly e-blasts with information, resources, and responses to frequently asked questions. Paying close attention to skilled nursing facilities is particularly important during this pandemic. As we know, most of our most vulnerable residents are those that reside in SNFs, which again is regulated by the California Department of Public Health. Our goal is to be supportive of all long-term care facilities in San Diego, ensuring they have the resources and information to test their staff and residents and appropriately care for them. The county's activities to support the SNFs are going above and beyond as again, the SNFs are regulated by the state. This slide shows that out of the 86 SNFs, 60 or 70% have completed testing, and 26 are in the process of testing. The county has made testing kits, PPE, and clinical guidance available to all facilities that request them or experience an outbreak to ensure testing and resources are accessible and possible for most of our vulnerable residents. In addition, the county has released a request for information offering hospitals and other agencies the opportunity to provide on-site infection prevention and control assessments, staff training, and testing services for the facilities. Facilities in their respective networks of care. This innovative approach expands our testing capacity and encourages ongoing support for these facilities. Should an outbreak occur, specialized county strike teams are available to provide resources to test both staff and residents. These strike teams are made up of county nurses and ancillary staff who provide targeted infection prevention and control support, education, and testing support. As confirmed outbreaks are identified at congregate or long-term care facilities, public health response takes place following established protocols. And public health services epidemiology and our epi nurses provide surveillance of COVID positive cases, and investigators provide site infection prevention and control, technical assistance, staff training, assistance with linking facilities to staffing resources, personal protective equipment, and additional testing. Another population of focus is those that are in correctional facilities. There have been very few positive cases in our jails and juvenile facilities in San Diego County. Nevertheless, we have made testing available to all staff as well as all inmates upon booking, and testing is also performed on inmates who are symptomatic during the course of their incarceration. In addition, ongoing screening and testing of all staff and inmates have been put in place, and large-scale testing has been underway in both juvenile detention facilities in our county. To date, 1,621 individuals have been tested. This includes 348 staff and 1,273 inmates in jails working with the Sheriff's Department and Juvenile Hall working with probations. With the Sheriff's Department, 205 staff were tested, 13 were positive, and 193 were negative. The 1,162 residents or people at intake and discharge, intake screening, there were 13 positive and 467 negatives, or 3% positives. And housing screening for people incarcerated, 0 positives and 488 negatives. And for those with symptoms being tested, for those incarcerated, 2 were positive, with 192 being negative. Outreach and education that has been performed at local correctional facilities by placing appropriate signage and COVID-19 educational video has been placed or incorporated into the daily orientation of inmates. Trace efforts at local correctional facilities include tracing of positive employees, investigations on inmates in custody, and the T3 team completes the contact tracing investigations on inmates who test positive upon intake. Treatment efforts at local correctional facilities include treating those inmates accordingly and housing them in medical isolation wards. They are transported to hospitals if warranted. Going on to the next slide. From the very beginning of this response, the county has strategized how to support individuals experiencing homelessness in our region. According to the 2019 point-in-time count, there are 7,619 individuals experiencing homelessness in San Diego County. These individuals were likely to find it challenging to have appropriate places to social distance, isolate, or self-quarantine. The County of San Diego has partnered with local hotels to provide temporary lodging for persons who are in need of a place to isolate, quarantine, or shelter in place. While in the hotel rooms, individuals receive wraparound services, including meals, laundry and cleaning services. Guests are also connected to social services through eligibility workers. A housing navigator is available to assist in locating longer-term housing. Additionally, there are medical, behavioral health, and spiritual services provided. To date, we have placed 551 homeless individuals identified as COVID-19 positives or suspects, or individuals who were at high risk due to being older adults or having chronic medical conditions in our county public health hospitals. Additionally, the Regional Task Force on the Homeless has placed 439 high-risk homeless individuals in hotel rooms. To date, there have been approximately 68 homeless persons with confirmed COVID-19. In addition, testing strike teams are available to provide testing to shelter facilities that do not have the resources to test their staffs and residents. And the county continues to support with nursing and testing at the city's Convention Center shelter. In addition to overnight public health and nursing services, the county provides 3 days of on-site testing every other week for Convention Center guests and staff. And county nurses continue to accompany homeless outreach or teams, or our HOT teams across the region, to provide screening, referrals, and nearly 9,000 hygiene kits to individuals they encounter in the field. As indicated previously, partnerships, outreach, and education are key strategies to ensure the county is reaching as many individuals and serve providers as possible. Other vulnerable populations mentioned in the attestation and containment plan include children and youth, older adults, and persons with disabilities. As in regards to youth, in partnership with the Office of Emergency Services, the Youth Emergency Readiness Ambassador Program was developed. We have recruited over 20 diverse youth from around the county to work with Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT teams, representatives to develop and disseminate messages related to youth on emergency preparedness, with topics including wildfire, earthquakes, and of course, COVID-19. In addition, our T3 team has established the COVID Collaborative for Children in partnership with Rady's, or in partnership with Rady Children's Hospital, which has the capacity to test 2,000 children and families every day. The county holds its early childhood care and education telebriefing during the second and the fourth Tuesday of each month. Additionally, the Child Care Disaster Council gave a presentation to the Unified Disaster Council on COVID-19 activities. The county also holds its K-12 education telebriefing on every Tuesday. In support of our older adult population, the county has increased AIS meal recipients via contracts with the Jewish Family Services and other providers from 4,000 clients pre-COVID-19 to 7,000 currently, and triple meals from 100,000 per month to 330,000 per month. The state's Great Plates Delivered program, which has partnered with over 30 local restaurants to serve daily meals, was extended through July 10th and is now serving over 1,600 participants. And Operation Fat Food has provided over 743 households with food boxes delivered to their homes. These households include residents with disabilities and older adults who may not qualify for other programs. The partnerships with this program include 211, Facilitated Access to Coordinated Transportation, or FACT, Red Cross, San Diego Food Bank, Feeding San Diego, as well as county staff and other community volunteers. More specific to persons with disabilities, over 20,000 welfare check-in calls to in-home support service recipients have been conducted, including disabled children and adults of all ages. These calls have been made ensuring clients have access to food and medications. On the next slide, to ensure there is equitable and accessible COVID-19 testing, the county has partnered with the County of San Diego COVID-19 Equity Task Force to proactively address health equity in underserved communities using the T3 strategy. This partnership supports T3 motto, accessible COVID-19 testing, or ACT for everyone. On April 23rd, through the California Health Alert Network for San Diego, the county updated its priority level testing criteria and expanded its definitions of vulnerable populations to include persons with HIV, persons living in rural communities, racial and ethnic groups, as well as Native Americans. On April 15th, the county received a notice of award for Ryan White HIV/AIDS Program Part A COVID-19 response. The amount of the award is $543,390, and it is part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. The county worked with providers to ensure the following services are provided for HIV/AIDS individuals. Ensuring COVID-19 testing and outreach treatment are available to all Ryan White clients, approximately 4,000 per year, and other household members who are also uninsured regardless of their HIV status. Increasing the availability of case management to support clients who are returning to care or who need additional support in navigating benefits and services. Increasing food assistance, providing short-term hotel stays for clients who are unhoused or have unstable housing. Increasing transportation assistance in the form of ride sharing to reduce the need for clients to use mass transportation, and providing health education and risk reduction counseling regarding HIV and AIDS, as well as COVID-19. Regarding racial and ethnic groups, since the start of the COVID-19 response, attention to creating materials in multiple languages and responding to community needs have been a priority. As an example, resources in Spanish and other languages have been shared with the Relay team, which includes 480 individuals representing trusted community-based organizations, nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, and other agencies serving 9 different language groups, including Spanish. Under the guidance of a community advisory board, SDSU, through a county contract, will be hiring over 100 community health workers or promotores to serve as contract tracers in Spanish-speaking, Arabic-speaking, and African-American communities. Now going to the COVID-19 data. As in previous board meetings, we will now review the current COVID-19 data briefly. As shared by the governor yesterday, the number of COVID-19 cases continues to increase, and this is true for the state as well as the County of San Diego. Since the last presentation to your board, an additional 3,542 cases have been reported for a total of 11,096 positive COVID-19 cases through June 21st. This table seen here provides a summary of these cases with a breakdown by age, hospitalizations, intensive care unit or ICU admissions, and death. 5,963 of the total number, or 53.7%, are between the ages of 20 and 49 years of age, and this is slightly increasing since the prior week. The gender distribution remains unchanged, with 51% of the total being female and 49% being male. 1,627, or approximately 15% of the total number of cases, have been hospitalized, which has decreased slightly from 17.6% previously reported. Of the total number of those hospitalized, 451, or 4% of the total number of cases, have been admitted to the ICU, and this represents 27.7% of those hospitalized. And unfortunately, 338, or 3% of the total number of cases, have died. In taking a deeper look at the death demographics, 320, or 94.7%, were between the ages of 50 to and beyond 80 years. So this almost 95% are above 50 years of age. 57% were male and 43% were female. With regards to race and ethnicity, 43% were Hispanic or Latino, 42% white, 12% Asian, 3% Black or African American, and 0.3% were Pacific Islander. And we have 2 cases that have unknown race and ethnicity. And all of this information can be found on our website. The next slide is the classic EPI curve, which shows cases by onset of illness. In previous reports, we indicated that we had peaked between April 20th and May 8th, but as we have begun to reopen, we see that cases are increasing, and under the 14-day incubation period, there is one daily count that is as high as some of the other peaked days, and we anticipate that this number will increase because more cases occur during the 14-day incubation period. In the next section, in an effort to monitor the outbreak status across the entire state, the state developed metrics used to monitor all counties and compare across counties. These fall into 7 categories and are briefly outlined and portrayed here. These state monitoring metrics are utilized to place counties on a watch list if metrics are abnormal for 3 days in a row. To date, San Diego has not exceeded any of these metrics and therefore not to date been on a watch list. The first metric is the average number of tests per day, and we are at 163.7 tests per 100,000 populations. For the second metric, we have a case rate of 54.4 per 100,000 population. 3.8% of our tests have a positive result. We have seen a 1% decrease in the number of hospitalized COVID-19 patients, and 37.9% of ICU beds are currently available. And finally, we have 46.8% of ventilators available. These last metrics are also in our triggers. At the last board meeting, we presented 13 triggers or criteria with specific triggers across 3 categories. These categories include epidemiology or surveillance, healthcare or hospital capacity, and public health or response. These criteria are continuously monitored and presented at our county briefings. This slide is just an overview of all of the 13 metrics and provided to you as a snapshot. A green mark means that we have not reached the target or the trigger measurement and remain in good standing. A red mark means that the trigger has been impacted. And for trigger number 2, we are seeing that this is elevated. And this trigger is community outbreaks. As of yesterday, we had 10 community outbreaks. Most are businesses, and there are 3 that are private residences. And the first trigger, which is case count, is abnormal due to the irregularity in testing. This is a comparison of the last 5 days of testing with the percentage change in the prior 5 days of testing, and that percentage change is 72%. When we achieve stable testing, we anticipate that that number will normalize. Going to the next slide, The first of the three categories is epidemiology, which has 4 criteria. And the first trigger is related to, again, as I stated, the case count. So I've explained that. The trigger number 1 is an increase in new case counts of at least 10% for 5 consecutive days above a stable baseline without substantial increase in testing. So you can see here, as I've described before, the variation between these 2 5-day periods. The percentage change is 71.5% increase. The 5-day period from 6/17 to 6/21 is due to a delay in batches as well as a delay in testing due to technical difficulty with our laboratory equipment. We anticipate, without any further glitches, that these numbers will be very similar when comparing over the 2 5-day periods. The next criteria is community outbreaks. I've reviewed that for you, but this slide shows the actual outbreaks and the days that they have occurred. And so currently we have a total of 10 new outbreaks in community settings. And this is through June 21st. We do know that as of yesterday, June 22nd, we had 1 additional private setting outbreak, and that is an outbreak in a private setting related to a backyard barbecue. There were about 15 individuals attending, and 6 became ill and tested positive. Going to the next slide for criteria related to syndromic illnesses. This slide, as well as the next slide, which is related to influenza-like illnesses, these are individuals that present to the emergency department, and these numbers are remaining stable with no significant trajectory above 2 to 3%. So we'll skip the next slide and then go to slide related to hospital capacity. This is the second category related to healthcare, and it has 5 criteria. Trigger number 5 is met when hospitals reach 80% capacity of all hospital beds in the county. And certainly we will not wait to take actions if this metric is met. As of June 21st, the San Diego County hospitals were at 66% capacity, given the total number of 6,079 beds available, with 3,983 being occupied. This trigger is also related to the federal gating criteria number 4. The next criteria is increasing hospitalizations. Trigger number 6 is a 10% increase in the number of confirmed COVID-19 positive patients currently hospitalized, and over a 3-day rolling average for COVID-19 confirmed hospitalized patients from June 16th to June 18th, there were 286.7 COVID patients, and from June 19th to June 21st, 283.7 COVID-19 patients were hospitalized. This was a negative 1% change between these 2 time periods. The next criteria is related to limited capacity for intensive care unit or ICU beds. Trigger number 7 is met if there is less than 20% availability of all intensive care unit ICU beds, and we were at 38% availability. The next criteria is related to limited capacity of ventilators. Trigger number 8 is met if less than 25% availability of ventilators occur, and we were at 47% availability on June 21st. The next criteria is PPE supply. Trigger number 9 is met if only 50% of hospitals have at least a 15-day supply of PPE over a 3-day rolling period. As of June 19th, 83% of the hospitals had at least a 15-day supply of PPE. The final category is public health or response. The category has 4 criteria. The first criteria in this category is related to testing. Trigger number 10 is met if there is greater than 8% of positive tests as a percent of total tests within a 14-day period. As of June 21st, there is an average of 4.4% of positive tests as a percent of total tests within 14 days. This trigger is also related to federal gating criteria number 3. The next criteria is related to case investigations, and trigger number 11 is met if the first contact attempt only occurs for 70% of new positive cases within 1 day of notification over a 7-day period. From June 14th to June 20th, investigations were initiated within 24 hours of notification for 97.6% of new positive cases. In addition, as of June 22nd, the county has 197 case investigators. Contact tracing is the next criteria, and trigger number 12 is met when the first contact attempt is made for only 70% of close contacts of new positive cases within 24 hours of identification. Between June 14th and June 20th, 88.6% of close contacts of new positive cases had at least one contact attempt within 1 day of identification. As all contact tracers are hired and they become more efficient, we will see this percentage increase from 80% in the first 24 hours. And of note, from June 7th to June 13th, on average, each confirmed case generated approximately 2.5 close contacts identified as a result of the case investigation. These close contacts were in turn assigned to our contact tracers. As of June 22nd, the county has 230 contact tracing staff. This trigger is also related to gating criteria number 5. Last, the final criteria in the public health category is the homeless population. Trigger number 13 is met when temporary shelter is not available for less than 15% of the homeless population. Based on our 2020 Regional Task Force point-in-time count, as stated before, 7,619 homeless individuals existed at the time of the count. 15% of this is 1,351, and as of June 21st, there is temporary shelter available for 42% of the homeless population, which equates to 3,185 beds. So the next slide, just in ending or wrapping up here, as Don mentioned, our reopening team has been reviewing the guidance from the state, advising businesses, sectors, and industry associations and preparing them to reopen safely. Since our last board meeting, the sectors outlined on this slide have been allowed to reopen. We continue to field questions from businesses and organizations and provide guidance as they plan and reopen safely. The state cap for attendance will be lifted for religious services at places of worship and the right to protest outdoors, although attendance should be limited naturally through the implementation of strict physical distancing measures of a minimum of 6 feet between attendees from different households. The team also continues to meet with and advise associations that represent sectors and businesses that are currently not allowed to reopen in order to advocate to the state on their behalf. However, I must note that as stated in our last news briefing, due to the increased number of community outbreaks after last Friday, our plan is to curtail any additional reopenings until the number of outbreaks decrease as well. But we will look at everything on a case-by-case issue. Now, please welcome NDP's Acting Chief Operating Officer. Thank you.
Good morning. Recommendation 3 of today's board item is to add $30 million of appropriations in the Health and Human Service Agency to support the efforts that Dr. Wooten just discussed associated with COVID-19. We are estimating that for this fiscal year, which I'll remind everyone ends a week from today, that the cost toward these efforts will be as high as $130 million. We are recommending today's action to ensure that there are sufficient appropriations in Health and Human Services to cover these costs. These costs are public health and medical services, PPEs, equipment, testing, surveillance, housing, sanitation, and food, and so forth. This will require no additional general purpose revenue, as we'll be utilizing CARE Act funding, as well as FEMA and other program revenue. As a reminder, on May 19th, this board approved the CARES Act allocation and reporting framework, which this slide reflects. $175 million was allocated toward emergency response. We are projecting spending over $80 million in this fiscal year alone for these efforts. Everything from our EOC costs to PPE inventory for regional distribution, our staffing in all of our groups, sanitation, service and supplies, reopening costs, and so forth. There is $100 million under our framework allocated for testing, tracing, and treating, or T3. We're estimating about $10 million is projected by this fiscal year, and these costs will accelerate quite a bit as we continue to invest in these efforts in the coming weeks and months. $5 million is for the child care voucher program, which we will spend this year, and that is to provide child care assistance to essential workers. $25 million has been allocated to the 17 small cities. To date, a total of $4.3 million has already been issued to 3 cities, and we are reviewing plans for 7 other cities and expect to have those funds issued in the coming days, and we anticipate the remaining cities will be submitting their plans in the coming days. $17 million has been set aside for an economic stimulus program. Nothing has been spent in this area, as staff will be returning to the board on July 7th with the recommended plan. $2 million is allocated to child welfare services outreach efforts. Contracted services have been implemented, and we anticipate about $250,000 to be spent by the end of this fiscal year and the remainder in the next year. And finally, we have $15 million allocated toward behavioral health services, telehealth, and electronic information infrastructure. And behavioral health is currently working on that plan, and spending is expected to begin as early as July. Other notable areas in which we are spending resources includes the Great Plates Delivered program, which Dr. Wooten already discussed, and we're estimating that at around $4 million. We've committed $1.6 million of our state homeless COVID-19 funds toward the Convention Center homeless shelter that's run by the city in partnership with nonprofits, including RTFH, as well as the county. And of course, we have the boards approved back in April 21st, use of $5 million toward a small business loan program that assists small businesses in the unincorporated area with loans ranging from $5,500 to $50,000 to be repaid over several years with interest. So you can see we are spending a significant amount of money. As I said, we're estimating up to $130 million, and adding these appropriations will ensure that the agency has sufficient appropriations in our budget. In closing, I'll also point out that we're watching the state budget very closely, as that should be getting approved and signed in the coming days. And we do anticipate further CARES Act funding being allocated to the county as well as the small cities. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Don Stoyer for closing comments.
Thanks, Andy. As you can see, our efforts continue to focus on slowing the spread of COVID-19 virus. In doing so, our focus is shifting from immediate needs and response to continued planning, recovery, and prevention. Our efforts moving forward will even further align with ensuring we are reaching as many people as possible to test and trace to prevent the spread of the virus, and that we are ensuring the local healthcare system is able to care for and treat all patients in need. We remain flexible and are pivoting where needed to ensure the safety of our region. In that regard, the incident command structure as it looks today will be transforming to not only ensure we continue to focus on our efforts that make the biggest impact in preventing the spread of coronavirus, but also to free up our Emergency Operations Center to prepare for fire season and other emergencies that may come our way. We will be physically moving operations to an alternate site, and Incident Command will be joined by our Public Health Officer, our T3 leadership, and Medical Operations Center as the hub of COVID response. In addition to receiving this update, we recommend your board take the following actions with respect to this item. Ratify all actions previously taken in response to this local health emergency and local emergency. Establish appropriations of $30 million to support efforts associated with this response, as Andy described, and take any further actions necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic emergency response. And subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Very good. Are there any questions of staff on the presentation? Yes, Supervisor Vice Chairman Desmond.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cox, and thank you to staff for a very, very thorough presentation explaining all the triggers and everything else. In particular, the presentation on the vulnerable population. I really appreciate the efforts that are going towards the skilled nursing facilities, all the testing that's being done there, the correctional facilities, our aging population, and all the other vulnerable populations, racial groups, ethnicities, people with HIV and AIDS. I think you're doing a fantastic job in protecting our most vulnerable populations. And I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I have other comments, Mr. Chair, and a motion, but I'll wait until after the speakers. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of questions I'd like to ask.
Go ahead.
Dr. Wooten, if I read the chart right on the 10 community outbreaks, that might trigger a modification of the health order. Did I read that chart wrong?
The trigger, we will look at any of the triggers if they become abnormal and determine how any modifications would be made. In the case of the community outbreak specifically, they are in various business sectors, so there's not one commonality between these outbreaks. However, there are 3 to 4 that are in private settings, which speak to individuals not adhering to the best practices that we consistently recommend. The actions that would be taken, I alluded to at the end of my comments, and was stated earlier this week by Supervisor Fletcher, that going forward, we are planning to put a hold on any new openings up of guidances that we get from the state. We have not received any this week and are not in knowledge of any guidances that are coming soon, but we will evaluate any new guidance that we get before we open up in light of the community outbreaks that we do have. Tomorrow, 3 of the community outbreaks will fall off, but we will still be left at 8. So this next week is going to be very crucial in any new community outbreaks that occur.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for the job that you're doing. I know it's really tough, and at times there are people that are not happy with the decision that you make, but I respect the job that you're doing, but it's very hard. And I just wanted to thank you for that and the rest of the staff for the job. I have one other question, if I might. On the small business loan program, the $5 million, how much has been allocated? How much is out there for loans, and how much do we have left, or do we know yet?
Yes, Supervisor. Let me grab my paperwork here. At this point, we have issued out 218,500 loans to 7 different units. There were a total of 27 submitted to date. 10 withdrew and then 10 declined. So we have those 7 in play right now with more to come.
Thank you for that. My understanding, if they receive the PPP program from the feds, that they don't qualify for this program. Is that correct?
I do believe that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions by supervisors? If not, I'm gonna call a pause very quickly just to go back and deal with items 1 and 16. My understanding is both the callers on 1 and 16 did not call in. And so why don't we go ahead and consider item 1, which is the district attorney request to adopt a resolution for a contract with the State of California Victim Compensation Board for the Funeral, Burial, and Domestic Violence Relocation Emergency Fund. Let me ask the clerk of the board if there's any public speakers on this item.
Mr. Chairman, there are no requests to speak on this item.
All right, is there a motion for approval?
I would so move on both item 1 and 16 as recommended.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second. All right, Supervisor Fletcher is seconded. Is there any speaker on 16?
Mr. Chairman, the speaker that requested to speak on item 16 did not call into the meeting.
Okay, then what we have is a motion by Supervisor Jacobs, seconded by Supervisor Fletcher to approve the recommendations on item 1 and 16. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay, now we're back to item 4 for the public communication. My understanding, at least at the start of the meeting, is we had 83 speakers. It would be my intent to ask the speakers to confine themselves to 2 minutes. In fact, if they can do it less than 2 minutes, that's even better. Particularly if it's basically going to be supporting somebody else's comments. So we would ask for new comments as people are making their presentations. And I'll ask the clerk to go ahead and start with the first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will note for the record that we received 192 e-comments on this item, and that was as of 9 a.m. this morning. We have 49 callers on the line to address the board. As a reminder for the callers, if you do not wish to speak on this item, please hang up and call back when the board begins discussion of the next item. We're going to be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or their live video stream before they begin speaking. Aaron, please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 0440.
Good morning. My name is David Cherishore, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of Evans Hotels, which owns and operates the Bahia Hotel, the Catamaran Resort Hotel and Spa, both on Mission Bay, and the Lodge at Torrey Pines. All 3 of our hotels are full service, offering in-hotel dining and meeting rooms for catered events and group meetings. These events drive rooms business and generate as much as 50% of revenues at times. The following points demonstrate the importance of this business to the overall success of our hotels, as well as all full-service hotels in San Diego. Tourism and leisure travel is concentrated over weekends, holidays, and 60 days during the summertime. That leaves about 200 days a year that depend on business travel and meetings to fill our rooms. In February, just before the COVID-19 onslaught, catering and group business, food and beverage revenues were $2 million across our 3 hotels. This is in addition to rooms revenue that was generated. Catering events and group business is generally booked 3 to 18 months ahead of time. Summer is prime time for catered events, especially outdoor events such as weddings and receptions. The time to book this business is rapidly coming to a close. Similarly, bookings for group business for this summer and fall must start now. Leisure business will not sustain us after mid-August. Currently, we have furloughed more than 100 banquet employees who are waiting on the sidelines for this business to reopen. Another 100 plus employees who indirectly support catering and group business have already lost their jobs.
Sir, I'm going to ask you
dynamic is
comments.
I urge you to continue reopening hotel services. We are prepared to do so safely, and thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0582.
My name is Melanie Burkholder, and I'm a candidate for the California State Assembly in the 76th District. And more importantly, I'm a mom of 2 school-aged boys. The impacts of COVID-19 shutdown have been felt far and wide. Closures to our economy and our schools were made based on the need to flatten the curve. We've done that. As a mother, licensed mental health professional, and candidate for public office, this letter is a call to action for San Diego County's officials. take a vital step towards supporting our communities by reopening our schools to support our children and our economy. I have spoken with many parents and educators about the proposed hybrid openings. The plans that are presented offer numerous problems. Excuse me. We've entered the recovery phases for our state. As a result, we need to weigh the consequences of not opening our schools full time and the long-term effects it will have on our children. Studies have shown that children exposed to physical, mental, and educational trauma when natural disasters occur. Trauma-related anxiety in kids is real, and the COVID-19 pandemic qualifies as such. We should strive to minimize, not exacerbate trauma in our children. Additionally, children are adept observers of their parents, caregivers, and people in their community. They actively pick up on stress signals. By not allowing a full return to schools, these children will again be traumatized by the sterile environments they will be thrust into, with the facial body language being non-visible when hidden behind masks. And the added stress of seeing parents being forced to choose between financial or educational support for their families. A recent study by the San Diego Workforce Partnership and the San Diego Foundation found that 70% of households in the county with kids under 12 are dual working households. Those households, single parent households, homes with special needs children, and homes with kids who do not do well with distance learning will be highly impacted by a hybrid model. Now is not the time for more change with regards to our students. Please reopen the schools full time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0609. You may proceed. If not, we'll move on to 0710.
Hi, my name is Amanda McPhail. I am a coordinator here in San Diego and have a company called Creative Affairs, Inc. I also run 2 venues in downtown San Diego called the Ultimate Skybox, which is at the top of Diamond View Tower next to Petco Park, and another in the MetLife building, which is Deck 655. We're requesting that we follow the guidelines that we've already presented to you. I know most of you have read them so far. Basically, we took bars, hotels, restaurants, and day camps to create these guidelines. And what we're seeing as venues is that people are canceling their current events because of the uncertainty and unknowing of what's happening. And they're going into backyard private weddings or private neighborhoods, I should say. Currently, we have had a huge group of clients back out. And so we're asking that we understand there's an increase currently, but in a couple months from now to allow these events to take place so that we don't lose the back half of the year from those that had moved from spring and early summer. And we just urge you to allow our business to reopen because it's crucial. And there are so many people that are going to lose their jobs if we can't reopen come now or even by August. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0889.
Hi, my name is Erin Sheehan Bianchi, and I'm the Business Development Manager for Bright Event Rentals. I am in support of the guidelines Ms. McPhail referenced, which have been distributed, I believe, to all of the supervisors. The special event industry has been devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know. Our company has furloughed 90 to 95% of our full-time employees and did not hire any additional employees as we would normally do for the summer business. Our industry was the first to see the impact with the cancellations, and we're likely to be the last to recover. We're asking that the board take the initial steps to bring back our businesses by allowing the private hosted events to return. All of the members of our industry are in the business of creating special memories for our guests, be it a wedding, a graduation, or a milestone birthday. These are all special lifetime events which should be celebrated with close friends and family. We've already seen the impact that this has had on the graduations for our high school, college, and other graduates. Because of the private nature of the events we are recommending being approved, we have guest lists with contact information, which will help with tracing. We have trained professionals to plan and make sure all safety guidelines are met and adhered to. And these events do not require a special event permit, such as other events, street fairs, and festivals would require. The main guidelines we would be using have already been approved with restaurants, family entertainment, day camps, and wedding ceremonies. We're asking you to save our businesses and move forward by allowing these private hosted events to return. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0889.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Cox and Board of Supervisors. My name is Chuck Abbott, General Manager of the Intercontinental San Diego. Thank you for allowing me to share with you today. First and foremost, thank you for your leadership and dedication through these unprecedented times. The decisions are difficult, and I applaud you for all the work you have done to open up San Diego and keep us safe. My comments relate to allowing meetings, private events, banquets, wedding receptions, and other gatherings at hotels and other venues. Hotels have proven that they can operate safely during COVID-19. The industry leaders have developed comprehensive plans to host meetings and events with physical distancing protocols and practicing the state-approved safety guidelines. Meetings, banquets, and events are just as or safer than restaurant dining. Event organizers control the number of attendees and only invite specific individuals to attend. Meetings, banquets, and events are not only an important part of our tourism economy, but San Diego's overall economy. Our weather and multitude of venues, both indoor and out, make it ideal for residents and visitors to enjoy special events. Many of San Diego's hotels are built with the emphasis on holding events and supporting the convention center. Without the ability to reopen for events, many hotels will be severely challenged. We have re-engineered our operations and have the ability and ready to hold events under new guidelines. Please trust us to do the right thing, provide us guidelines, and we will continue to keep San Diego safe under your guidance and direction. Our industry is a leader in our communities, and our interest has and will always be the safety and well-being of our guests and employees. Thank you again for the opportunity to share my comments with you today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0609.
Good morning. My name is Christian Rosalie. The special events and celebrations industry is suffering. So first, I'd like to make the point regarding the impact on the industry. So venues are having to pay rent. They have expenses, significant expenses, and at the moment, there is no revenue. Our industry is struggling to survive. And with that being said, there are people still wanting to celebrate these events, which is leading to bootleg events, which means that people are desperate and inevitably want to party and celebrate, and they're being held at their houses. And the thing is, most importantly, without the necessary precautions and safety measures that should be taken place. So with our operations, obviously, as professionals, we want to ensure that these celebrations are taking place with the necessary precautions and protocol, of course, to ensure the safety for everybody. And that starts with requiring everybody to wear masks, sanitizer everywhere, social distancing as the guidelines stated for the events in the documents. And similar to the use of bars, restaurants, casinos, entertainment places, they are similar operations, and we feel that we should be able to host these special events, such as wedding receptions, where you have the dinner and then the traditional events, and then a little bit of dancing, but of course ensuring that there is distancing being taken place throughout the events. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1037. 1037.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Board of Supervisors. My name is Matt Leonard. I'm currently serving as the chair of the board for the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce, and we're asking you to take a look at the street fairs in a similar vein as our swap meets, and give the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations the opportunity to safely open. So with your guidance and your support, we're just asking for the opportunity to safely return to the street fairs. It's a vital source of revenue for an organization in our community that provides education and resources to our local business community. And it is drastically needed for us to stay in business for the revenue lost, the potential revenue loss from that event. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1072.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Brett Schanzenbach. I'm the President and CEO of the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of our 1,100 members, I would like to ask that you would encourage and push the state of California to allow street fairs to reopen, akin to how farmers markets and swap meets have been allowed to reopen. Hundreds upon hundreds of home-based cottage industry businesses use street fairs in our county as their primary means of doing business. These small cottage industry businesses have become a forgotten portion of the small business community because they don't necessarily have a brick and mortar space. So far, I'm not aware of any community outbreaks that have been linked to farmers markets or swap meets that have been open for quite some time now. These outdoor events are much safer than the peaceful protests that have been allowed to take place throughout our county. And street fairs can include many more, health control measures similar to what farmers markets and swap meets have done. So for these reasons, we encourage you to request from the state that street fairs be allowed to reopen immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1313.
Hello, this is Namara Mercer. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego County Lodging Association. First off, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for opening and the Public Health Officer for opening up hotels for leisure travel. Hotels are currently operating safely and are already seeing an uptick in business, which really benefits our employees getting back to work. On behalf of our membership and the hotel industry, we now respectfully request that you support and advocate with the state to reopen hotels for meetings and events. This request is not for major convention meetings or large community events, but meetings and events that can be hosted at hotels and other meeting and event venues. As been stated before, the hotels have been open since the beginning of COVID-19. They have been operating under comprehensive cleaning and physical distancing protocols, and those protocols are in place. Meetings and events would follow the same protocols, and they would be equally as safe. There are many hotels in San Diego that have not been able to reopen as leisure travel. Hotels that rely on hotel meetings and events, especially around the convention center, cannot reopen because the leisure travel doesn't generate enough occupancy to support those large properties. Getting those hotels reopened for all business will get workers back on the job and will stimulate the economy. The reality is that many businesses have been opened, but that put people in close proximity with one another. Allowing hotels to fully open for all business is no different and arguably safer than many of those businesses. Cleanliness and safety for employees and guests was the #1 priority of hotels before the pandemic, and they have enhanced those protocols. Please allow San Diego's third largest economic generator to fully reopen. We really appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1438.
Good morning, Supervisors and Chairman Cox. My name is Rick Bauer with a company called Kennedy Fairs. We manage outdoor street fairs in San Diego County, and we've had the privilege of managing these local fairs since 1974 for local sponsors such as Chambers of Commerce and downtown business associations. Since COVID-19, all these fairs have canceled or postponed to a future date, therefore creating a financial hardship for all. These fairs have been a positive community event for each city by allowing thousands of exhibitors, downtown merchants to at least give them a chance to market and sell their products and service in order to create revenues for their businesses. Additionally, these fairs and create positive and fun atmosphere for the people who live in and around the community. I believe our communities are ready for a change and ready to have a festive atmosphere once again. In light of the recent COVID-19 virus, we also realize the importance of creating a safe environment for all who participate in the fairs. We are ready and able to execute necessary safety protocols to create a safe environment for all. We are ready to open. We respectfully request the Board of Supervisors to vote favorably to allow outdoor street fairs to be assigned to a category of swap meets, which are currently open for business. We believe we can conduct and manage these street fairs in a fashion that will allow the best possible safety criteria to be implemented for all these events. Appreciate your time and consideration in reviewing our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1534.
Good morning. I'm the event coordinator for the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce. My name is Christy Hawthorne. We'd like you to encourage the state of California to allow street fairs to open and operate, as the previous caller, Rick Bauer, stated, the same way swap meets have been allowed to open and operate. Our street fairs support both local small businesses as well as local retail shops by bringing customers and merchants together. Additionally, these events are a significant source of revenue for our chamber, which has been working countless hours to support local businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our chamber has hosted educational forums to keep businesses up to date on the ever-changing policies of who can and can't be open and within what parameters businesses are allowed to remain open. Additionally, we have provided resources on government programs our businesses need to stay open. We need to be able to support our organization as well, and our Oceanside Harbor Days Street Fair is one of our significant sources of revenue. It's Oceanside's longest running event, and we can operate a safe place of commerce just like a swap meet can. We ask you to push the state of California to allow street fairs to operate immediately as the swap meets do, and thank you for your consideration and support.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1581.
Hi, my name is Gina Hunley. I'm with SD Weddings by Gina. I'm a local wedding planner, and I'm calling in to voice my support for the safe reopening of private events. Our wedding industry has suffered tremendously from the fallout of COVID-19. We have had many cancellations and postponements, which means significant monetary loss for our small businesses. We know private events won't be taking place tomorrow or even next month, but it is crucial to have a reopening timeline and put safe event guidelines in place now so that we can plan for the future with our clients. Please help us save our local event industry. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1604.
Hi, good morning. Elise Charlesworth. I'm a San Diego County resident for 33 years now and event industry leader. I support the reopening of privately hosted events, which have closed guest lists that can be easily traced. Restaurants and bars are allowed to reopen with higher capacities than most weddings. Unsanctioned events are happening now without any social distancing guidelines, which is leaving the public at greater risk of contracting COVID. We need a timeline for reopening as well as guidelines in place for safely managing events. Sanctioned events will allow for education, contact tracing, and be controlled by licensed event providers. Please help our industry reopen safely by asking Governor Newsom to allow San Diego to reopen events. We are on a much longer timeline than other industries since our clients need to make the decision to move forward or postpone months in advance. Our industry will be devastated if this action is not taken now. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1695.
Good morning, distinguished supervisors and county leaders. Thank you for your dedicated service and time this morning. My name is Amy Olkatucken, and I'm a local event planner and owner of First Comes Love and Catalyst Creative. I'm also spearheading the private event sector's reopening efforts for San Diego. As my colleagues have mentioned, we strongly urge you to support the reopening of privately held social events. I have been working with all of you directly or your staff and hope you have had the opportunity to review the guidelines for events that we have put together to ensure safe reopening. These guidelines have also been reviewed by the county reopening team and Dr. Wooten and are also currently under review by the CDPH. While I understand that the guidelines will ultimately come down from the state, the very important distinction I want to make sure you're clear on is that our industry has a much longer lead time than other industries. We need action now to be able to reopen events in the coming months. While we recently hit the trigger point for community outbreaks, we need to ask Governor Newsom for the ability to reopen events now so that when the county stabilizes, we can move forward quickly to reopen private events. Additionally, events are happening. They just are in people's backyards. So as an industry, we're terrified of these unsanctioned events. that are throwing caution to the wind and not complying with guidelines. Our plans will help to mitigate this and keep San Diegans safe by allowing event professionals to manage these guidelines. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1725.
Hello, good morning. My name is Michel Maleko, and I am the owner of the French Gourmet, and I also speak on behalf of about a dozen of other off-prem caterers. Off-premise catering is an industry which has been completely devastated. Since March 15, all events have been canceled, and it is crucial for the industry for you to petition that private events are open again. There is a need out there. Funerals are not happening, weddings are not happening, and the whole group that I am meeting with regularly is ready to proceed with caution, with the social distancing, just like a restaurant do, plexiglass in front of bars, changing the style of menu where people are not helping themselves on buffets, but where we serve individual plates and everything. There's also a good advantage in private parties that everybody is traceable. If there was to be an outbreak, we could trace everyone that was at the party. So I'm respectfully and urgently asking you to, allow those events to happen. It takes, up to 1 year for a wedding to happen. And right now, everybody is on standby, and a lot of my competitors have no revenue whatsoever. And, we need to move on and help. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1830.
Good morning. My name is Drew Peters, and I own a professional wedding and event entertainment service business here in San Diego. I thank the Board of Supervisors for the opportunity to speak today, and I applaud you all on your efforts and progress to return us to a sense of normalcy during these unprecedented times. However, we're not quite there yet. So I'd love to urge you guys to please reach out to Governor Newsom about lifting some restrictions and at least implementing some reopening policies for specifically small hosted private events, whether they are weddings or parties in general. Again, we're not talking about large concerts or festivals or sporting events. These have closed guest lists and can easily trace all the source of any kind of outbreaks. Secondly, events are happening now. So weddings are moving to backyards. House parties are reemerging without any kind of guidance or safety implementations. So we want to mitigate the risk as the wedding and events industry as quickly as possible with some kind of reopening guidelines, as well as for our clients who unfortunately have been also burdening themselves with the debts that have come on from losing vendors, in addition to our industry itself. So a lot of these are just small, locally owned businesses, just family owned or even solo entrepreneurs. So we are really encouraging at least some kind of guidelines for the future. And again, we have a lot of different guidelines that we're trying to implement as we go now, especially with Amy's spearheading of this whole thing. We also have a much longer lead time on a typical event. Something like a wedding does require months and months of planning, and again, significant costs are involved. So again, thank you guys for your time, and I hope that we can move forward with some reopening implementation.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1858.
Hello, my name is Holly Kalkin, and I'm a local wedding planner. My business is Holly Kalkin Weddings. I'm calling today to express my support, along with my other industry colleagues, for the reopening of wedding receptions and privately held events. With guidelines in place, these events can take place safely and should be given the same considerations as bars and restaurants, both which often accommodate more than the average wedding reception. Our event industry is being overlooked. Those that make this our living are being destroyed, and our couples who are trying to plan their most special day are anxious for answers. We all need to get back to work. The safety measures are there and ready to be put into place. I urge you to please allow the reopening of private events and wedding receptions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1951.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Ashley Martinez, Manager of Government Relations at San Diego County Regional Airport Authority. The Airport Authority is in support of the county requesting additional guidance from the governor, which allows hotels to safely hold meetings and private events. A significant number of travelers that pass through the airport come to San Diego to conduct business, celebrate weddings, attend conferences and special events, as well as to vacation. And many of those visitors to our region travel by air and are a vital source of revenue that supports the hotel industry, other event businesses, and the 9,000 employees that work at the airport, including our concessionaires, airlines, ground transportation partners, and others. Similar to the steps that we have taken to protect the health and safety of our employees and passengers, hotels and other event sites and operators have modified their operations to have the ability to safely hold events under the new public health guidelines. Given the importance of these meetings and what they mean to our local economy, the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority supports the county's request of the state to allow hotels and other sites who have implemented proper safety measures to hold meetings and private events. We would also ask that once the state agrees that the county then allow for these meetings and events to occur through an amendment to the local public health order. Thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate the county's support for the travel industry and for your support of the San Diego International Airport. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2128.
Hi, good morning. First, my name is Rebecca Tomasello. I am a mom of two. And first, I want to thank and support the mother that spoke early on about reopening schools. I could not agree more. Furthermore, I wanted to express my concerns of the playgrounds still being closed. Our children are hardly affected by the virus, yet severely impacted by the measures being taken by political figures. If a hair and nail salon can use UV sanitation devices, I see no point in keeping structures sitting in the San Diego sun all day closed. I fear that this is not to protect our children, but to fulfill a political agenda, more mandatory vaccines. Our children need to play outside and go to school. However, by opening the playgrounds and resuming classic school, it presents the message that our children are safe. If our children are safe, the number one target for mandated vaccination is then lost, and the agenda goes unfulfilled. It also seems to me, by keeping playgrounds and schools closed, that we are doing the opposite of promoting health for our children. Obesity is one of the underlying health conditions causing complications and fatalities to persons contracting COVID-19. By keeping our children indoors and engaged in video games and screen time while parents work, as well as denying them a well-balanced meal provided by school, we are putting them at greater risk for childhood obesity and therefore increasing their risk of COVID complications. This makes no sense to me. The only guidance we receive from our public health officials is to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. As a health official, one would hope that their focus would be on guidance to better health, to weather COVID without hospitalization and complications. I have never heard one recommendation for exercise, vitamin D, healthy diet, or anything that would keep our population healthy. And it's disappointing. I would like to see our playgrounds reopen, our schools to commence as normal, and our public health officials and political leaders to offer more guidance on health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2135.
Good morning. My name is Anita Edmondson. I'm the board chair with the Poway Chamber of Commerce. I had a prepared statement, but it's along the lines of comments made by the Carlsbad Chamber, Oceanside Chamber, and Rick Bauer of Kennedy Associates, particularly in regards to farmers markets, which have a very similar outdoor setup and attraction for community members as street fairs. So I'm going to keep this short. Our own annual festival has been postponed from March 29th to September 13th. So the Poway Chamber encourages you to please help us bring business and community together again in a safe and enjoyable way And please push the state of California for street fair openings with appropriate safety protocols, which we are all absolutely ready and willing to implement at our events. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2332.
Good morning, supervisors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Andy Conder, and I'm Vice President of Operations for Trademark Venues. We are an event management and coordination company in North County, and we execute more than 500 wedding ceremonies and receptions a year and employ more than 200 people in North County, San Diego. As a very people-oriented business, I just wanted to say that people are suffering. People are suffering emotionally, people are suffering financially, and that includes both our clients and our employees, watching their friends go back to work at restaurants, watching their friends go back to work at casinos, at bars even, while they have to stand on the sidelines and watch the freedoms that these other people are being granted denied to them. With these professional settings, as many of my colleagues have already stated, we're able to control and regulate and meet the guidelines. We really do need to be able to bring out of the shadows the events that are happening illegally at venues or in people's backyards, which are causing some of these outbreaks, I am sure. There's really no difference between a professional catering company or a outdoor wedding venue, of which ours are exclusively, to operate as we fill in church pews, as we allow bars to open, as we allow restaurants to open, and so on and so forth. In many cases, we'll be able to do it more safely, certainly more organized and more regulated. I appreciate the time and the support. We just ask that you send these recommendations up to the governor and not have wedding venues and events overlooked any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2465. Oh. 2465.
Good morning. My name is Edie Johnson. Dr. Wooten is an unelected employee responsible, quote, to plan, organize, and direct all functions related to public health in San Diego County. Her recommendations are limited in scope, and she answers to 2 administrative officers under your discretion. Conversely, the elected County Board of Supervisors are responsible for establishment and enforcement of laws, ordinances, and other matters relating to all aspects of health and welfare for San Diegans. In last Thursday's briefing, Dr. Wooten stated that we won't have herd immunity statistics until we reach, quote, 60, 70, 80, 90% immunity, end quote, whether by natural means or a vaccine. We know that there is no guarantee that we will have a vaccine. It's an oxymoron, maybe even poor science, to preach social distancing and sheltering in place when realistically achieving herd immunity is nature's response to any virus. And the way that nature can fight the virus is when people are together. The community outbreak trigger level is unreasonable and works against herd immunity, which is our current best hope. It should be revised. San Diegans are going hungry. Some are too scared to go outside for physical activity. The cumulative figures shared during the daily briefings are misleading to many. Suicides, abuse, and financial pressures are increasing. For those who choose, pot shops and liquor stores are available for stress management. They've been open and paying sales tax for the past 3 months, and quite frankly, I am tired of the disparity between businesses that uplift the community that are closed or underutilized and those that do not, which have remained open at full capacity. There should be vigorous debate happening during these meetings since you are deciding whether to continue to deny the San Diego population the ability to make decisions to live their best lives. I urge you to be reasonable, be rational, use common sense. You should be working aggressively towards the common good. COVID or not, term limits or not, election year or not, I believe it's time to rotate the board members on the Board of Supervisors COVID Task Force and get San Diego back to work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2752.
Good morning. My name is Paula Stager, Artistic Laser Productions. The previous speakers have already addressed 4 of the points that I was going to bring up. So about the only thing I can add is consider this. Empirical evidence shows large gatherings can happen without increasing the spread of COVID-19. 2.5 weeks ago, there were large groups of protesters, and I'm quoting from San Diego Union Tribune. The protests stretched from Vista to Santee to downtown San Diego, where the biggest group attracted thousands of participants in a march from Waterfront Park to Hillcrest. Police estimated the crowd at about 3,000, but at least one report from the scene put the crowd at thousands more. Looking at the charts of hospitalizations and deaths since then, the numbers are the same as or less than when we were under full quarantine. So it looks like we can gather safely. I was looking at pictures. People were shoulder to shoulder. The key is they were wearing face masks, and I will bet every one of them washed their hands very carefully afterward. The only other point I can add is something that sort of reinforces what the previous speaker just said. Nearly half of all Americans report the coronavirus crisis is harming their mental health, according to a Kaiser Family Foundation poll. A federal emergency hotline for people in emotional stress registered more than 1,000% increase in April compared with the same time last year. Last month, roughly 20,000 people texted that hotline run by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Humans are a very social species. We need social interaction in person to maintain mental health. Obviously, online interaction isn't enough. There have been many articles long before COVID started talking about online interaction actually causing us to disconnect and feel more isolated. We desperately need to be allowed to gather again. And our industry desperately needs to get back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2828.
Thank you so much. This is Carrie Capich, the COO at the San Diego Tourism Authority. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors and county staff for all the work and leadership you've been doing to reopen our tourism economy. Unfortunately, the unemployment data is severe and quite depressing. We've lost over 50% of leisure and hospitality jobs through this pandemic. That's over 100,000 jobs, 100,000 San Diegans that have been impacted by all of this. We are very supportive of taking the next step, which is the reopening of professionally managed and controlled events at hotels and venues. We are supportive of the work that's been done with event guidelines and the speakers that have spoken already today, along with hotel leaders. We have been operating safely in our venues, and with all of these new guidelines in place, safety guidelines in place, and the work that the Tourism Authority and others are doing to help educate our community, including a safe destination pledge with guidelines for operating safely, and also a safe traveler pledge. We're ready to get our employees back to work. Thank you so much. We look forward to hopefully seeing this vital sector and part of our tourism economy open very soon.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3277.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Jackie Horton-Toft, and I am a vendor that uses the street fairs and similar activities for my business. It is my understanding that some of the events, such as farmers markets, have been allowed to reopen, but only for food products. And I've been told that swap meets are open, so I don't really understand why street fairs have not been allowed to reopen. I've been a vendor at these street fairs for many years. These events pay the bills for many people, such as myself. Most of us don't qualify for unemployment benefits, and our businesses are not the type that qualify for loans. We do, however, pay sales tax to the state. I personally have lost out on over 31 and two-day events so far this year, plus, of course, the Del Mar Fair. Meanwhile, my bills continue. Some of my bills have been less because of the shutdown, but not all. For instance, even though I'm not driving as much, I still have to pay car insurance. I need my cell phone for my business, and I have to pay a monthly bill for it, even if I'm not actually generating business. It's imperative that the street fairs be reopened, not just for the financial well-being of the vendors, but for the general public and that gathering and social situation that other people have talked about. I urge you to please take whatever steps are necessary. If swap meets can make this work within the guidelines, street fairs can do it also. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3343.
Hi, this is Teresa, San Diego resident. I looked up the leading causes of death in California. We have heart disease, cancer, stroke, Alzheimer's, chronic lower respiratory disease, accidents, diabetes, and then number 8, influenza pneumonia. Now, I understand there's a big concern over COVID, but I would really recommend these laws punishable by imprisonment go to strong recommendation. I don't understand why we are controlling people in the name of health, yet cigarettes are legal. We are telling people they can play tennis but not football. They can sit at a restaurant but they can't send a friend home. All these minute details, but we are not doing anything about the other illnesses. And I don't mean to pick on you, Ms. Wooten. You could have a thyroid condition, for all I know. But when I see you walk up and down to the podium, you do not look like you are medically healthy. How would you like it if someone was controlling how much you ate and you exercised, controlling your life in the name of health? I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. Let's go back to personal choice. Thank you.
Our next speaker is 3561.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Burns-Bergman. I'm co-founder and executive director of A New Path. Nonprofit organizations like ours are struggling to continue our life-saving work during this pandemic. I'm also a fashion show producer, and all of my events have been canceled since March, including fundraisers for my nonprofit. We support the recommendations of the event industry to reopen charitable events and fundraisers following strict protocols and guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3758.
Hello, my name is Patricia Keller. I'm a festival manager in North County, and I want to thank all the supervisors for your efforts on getting San Diego County back to work. As you well know, there's still much to do in this area, and I represent a business sector that's still closed and unfairly so. As a contracted outdoor festival manager working on behalf of local chambers and business associations, it's extremely disappointing to be included in the COVID-19 category that was relegated to phase 4. We've been shut down hard all spring, early summer. Street fairs and festivals benefit many businesses. These include our clients, chambers and business associations who are now experiencing real losses of tens and up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Also, businesses who provide our logistical support contracts, event rentals, traffic control, and communication equipment, who are now experiencing losses of tens of thousands of dollars. All our vendors, to include artisans, micro-enterprise entrepreneurs, cottage industries, food booths, as well as marketing booths for larger brick-and-mortar stores, who are all now experiencing totals in hundreds of thousands of dollars. And finally, our event management staff, who are unemployed. We were initially told we were phase 4 and there would be no reopening until herd immunity was reached and vaccine was in place. Then as businesses began to reopen, we regained some hope that reason would prevail. And that's where we are today, fervently praying and hoping that reason and common sense will prevail. It's highly discriminatory to our industry to suggest that managers of large indoor retail venues, which are indoors, no fresh air, no breezes, no natural sunlight, or large outdoor swap meets or farmers markets are capable of implementing all necessary health and safety protocols, but managers of outdoor events and festivals are incapable of implementing them. I cannot urge the board and the public health officer to please give our industry the respect that you've afforded farmers markets, swap meets, and big box retail managers to safely open our events in a controlled manner with all the health and safety protocols in place. And very importantly, due to the significant lead time necessary to prepare for these events, we need immediate action towards opening to salvage even our fall events that are on the schedule. Thank you very much for advocating on behalf of business in San Diego County and your consideration of this request.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4130.
Hi, I'm Ashton Forbes, plaintiff in the face covering lawsuit against the county. What reputable science is there for healthy people to wear face masks? Science on masks has been settled, and clinical studies of healthcare workers have shown that cloth masks provide no measurable benefit and are not recommended, and even N95 masks are of limited effectiveness against influenza-like illnesses. The studies in support of masks that have come out recently either use cherry-picked data or models based on assumptions of asymptomatic transmission being, quote, up to 40%. These misleading studies are spread widely on social media as fact with no broader scientific discussion of their merits. Is this how our county officials are basing their scientific opinions? I fear it may be. We are paying some 200 people to track and trace what are the rates of asymptomatic transmission in our area. We have the data. Why is the scientific research not a priority? If there is little to no asymptomatic transmission, then there is no reason for healthy individuals to wear a mask. What basis is there for individuals under 19 to have to wear masks? The death rate for this demographic has a better chance of winning the lottery, perhaps twice over, than dying from COVID-19. What grounds is there for the continuing health emergency order, and what metric by will it end? The current restrictions are meant to be temporary, and there is no proven treatment or vaccine for COVID-19. There has never been a coronavirus vaccine. Why isn't anyone in public health promoting people actually being healthy, eating correctly, getting exercise? Being healthy is the scientifically proven best way to prevent death from COVID-19, not wearing masks. The people that suffer the most from these restrictions are the working poor and the vulnerable. End the security theater, reopen San Diego, revoke the public health order. This was Ashton Forbes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4708. 4708. We'll move on to 4717.
Good morning. My name is Michael Poltrak. I'm the Commodore of the San Diego Association of Yacht Clubs. Our organization is comprised of maritime businesses, sailing associations, and yacht clubs here in San Diego County. Boaters in the San Diego area are anxious to be able to get back onto the water. The majority of recreational boating and racing activities can be conducted in relative safety and in compliance with most safeguards currently being used for dining, shopping, sports fishing, and other activities that are currently being allowed. The great majority of San Diego boaters operate their boats in a safe and responsible manner. A large portion of the members I'm representing are interested in returning to participate in structured sailboat racing with crew from outside their own household. We are currently allowed to dine indoors with people outside of our own households. This presents much more risk and exposure than boating in an open air environment. Sailboat racing can be conducted in a safe manner with regards to COVID-19. I have submitted to your board proposed details of guidelines for the safe boating activities. Please join me in requesting that the state of California allow for safe, competitive recreational boating. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5010.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and members of the board. I am Colleen Cook, and I am the Race Committee Chair of Cortez Racing Association and the Race Committee Secretary for Southwestern Yacht Club. As part of the sailboat racing community of San Diego, I appreciate the importance of preventative measures against COVID-19. As you've moved forward opening San Diego County, your protocols have been about how to live with COVID-19, and I emphasize live. I'd like to encourage you to continue leading the way for San Diegans and now adapt guidelines for sailboat racing. San Diego is one of the sailboat racing capitals of the world, having hosted the America's Cup and boasting America's Cup champions like Dennis Conner and Olympic champions like Vince Brune, J.J. Fetter, Mark Reynolds, and more recently, Caleb Payne and Brianna Provencha. Sailboat racing is a substantial part of the marine industry in San Diego, and resuming sailboat racing means boosting that economy, which I know is one of your goals. The San Diego racing community is ready with sample safe on the water guidelines for your consideration. These have been forwarded to Dr. Wooten and previously sent to each of you. We are ready, willing, and open to working with you to develop safe sailboat racing guidelines for this outdoor activity and ready to lead the way as befits one of the sailboat racing capitals of the world. We would appreciate your attention to this iconic part of San Diego living as the season is upon us. Thank you for your time and efforts.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5320.
Hello, my name is Laura Worm, and I own Bivouac Cider Works, a craft cidery and restaurant in the heart of North Park. And I am calling in to encourage an ease of restrictions and to allow privately hosted social events. My interest in this is on a few levels. First of all, my family business, my parents and brother's company is Becker's Catering, and their entire livelihood is catering for privately held events. And so this has had an extreme impact on our family business. But then on my business at Bivouac Cider Works, we have two parts of our business, and one is bars and restaurants and liquor stores that we do outside distribution, and the restaurant here in North Park. And then the other is self-distribution to people who are having privately held events. For example, echoing the last caller's sentiment, we provided cider to the San Diego Crew Classic for the last few years. We often provide cider to weddings, corporate events, and other places. I can speak from the relaxed or moving towards reopening standards from a restaurant perspective. We have reopened our tap room and restaurant in North Park with all of the safety guidelines. We have an opening procedure. We take all of our employees' temperatures. We place everyone at a 6 feet distance. People are required to have masks coming in. And we have the signs posted everywhere, et cetera. And it's been extremely successful. We've been able to recoup some of the dramatic loss that we had during the shutdown. We have been able to re-engage with our community, and we've been able to be a safe haven where people can come out and socialize, but at a safe distance. People have been extremely cautious, and they've been really followed the rules, but it's showed that people are willing to follow the rules and do this safely. So we encourage that for social events.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5325.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Jascott. I'm a Serra Mesa resident, transportation civil engineer, and most importantly, a mother. In accordance with the public speakers today, I would like to motion to lift restrictions for playgrounds, hotel meetings and conferences, team competitions without spectators, street fairs, churches with no capacities, and wedding receptions. Specifically, I would like to strongly voice to open our playgrounds now, which have been closed for over 100 days. This is impacting our lowest risk demographic of children under the age 20 who sit at a 0% fertility rate in San Diego County, as presented by Dr. Wooten earlier this morning. Additionally, our current data shows that the virus is at a 0.4 CFR per the CDC, that the virus is not transferred via surfaces, also per the CDC, that the virus is not able to survive in sunlight, per the Department of Homeland Security, and that children are not super spreaders, per BMJ. These draconian measures currently in place do not use common sense and are hurting our economy and the health of our community. We urge you as our San Diego officials to act in congruence with our current science and data regarding face masks recommendations, focusing more on hand washing and improving overall health and immunity of our community, and lifting restrictions for all places of business, worship, recreation, and education, allowing San Diegans to thrive once again, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. As we continue to put our trust in you as local leaders, please show us the same respect and trust and continue that we make the right choices for ourselves and for our children's well-being. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5656.
Good morning, Chairman Cox and distinguished supervisors. My name is Zafar Dejani. I own the Abbey Catering Company in La Jolla, which primarily focuses on private social events like weddings. We cater over 600 weddings and private events per year. I also own the Cuvier Club and Downtown Abbey Club, which are private event venues. I'm here to give you firsthand experience of what the new normal is for events, backyard and private home weddings that not only have no COVID safety guidelines nor protocols and often violate capacity fire codes. Further, there is an Arizona effect. Thousands of hosts are moving their events to our neighbors in places like Arizona's with increased virus infections and that have no safety protocols. These hosts and guests are returning from these high-risk areas like Arizona, and on top of that, we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in lost economic impact and tax revenue. There's a very big distinction between bootleg events and sanctioned events with guidance. Bootleg events are super spreading events. Sanctioned events have licensed professionals planning and executing the events. Sanctioned events also are hosted in larger, adequate venues, easily promoting social distancing, COVID safety protocols, and adhering to fire codes for private events. I'm honored to be on the team that prepared the guidelines that we have submitted to you all and through various channels all the way up to the governor's office. When we prepared these guidelines, we were not trying to reinvent the wheel. We used the existing guidelines for the restaurants, bars, and ceremonies. And all of these guidelines have already been approved. There's a very important distinction between planned private events and spontaneous or public events. Spontaneous public events include concerts, festivals, parades, and sporting events. I support opening in stages and only opening privately hosted events at this time, which are planned in advance with careful consideration and education. I also want to let you know there's a tremendous amount of COVID safety fatigue. And the last thing I want to let you know is when we have private events, guests can be contacted for contact tracing because there are guest lists. I passionately ask you please open up privately hosted events, not concerts, not festivals, so they can be held with COVID and fire safety protocols. Thank you for your support and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5676.
Hello, this is Ann Strobel with Ann's Plans. I'm in support of the submitted guidelines for private events. I'm a self-employed sole operator of my wedding business that I started in 2000, and I've been employed in this industry in San Diego since 1988. Since then, I've planned anywhere from 60 to 25 weddings per year. In this March, I was lucky enough to plan one. Now I, with hundreds of my colleagues, have thousands of clients waiting for the green light to proceed, as we are on a much longer lead time than other industries, since our clients need to make the decision to move forward or postpone with months in advance. Our industry has been devastated and will continue to be destroyed if we do not plan for the fall or winter now. Not only are home weddings continuing without professional guidance, potential business is not coming to San Diego any longer, but going to different counties and states with the least amount of mandates and guidelines and creating an even more dangerous risk. However, we all agree the most important factor is everyone's safety. The San Diego Wedding Industry Committee has worked extremely hard to compile policies, procedures, and guidelines to educate wedding professionals and clients alike to keep everyone safe. Industry professionals with multiple licenses, certifications, degrees, and extreme years of experience that are able to advocate for private events, reopening with education, approved and consistent guidelines, as well as validating compliance. This would be a more strict display of CDC policies to some currently open restaurants. Please allow us to reopen wedding receptions in San Diego and keep our county safely and loved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6050.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kirchgessner. I'm the Commodore of Point Loma Yacht Club. Many of our major events of the year involve boating as well as racing on the bay. Most of these events require a crew of 3 to 7 members, depending upon the size of the boat. Looking back 2 weeks to your June 2nd meeting, after several calls and statements from the members of the sports fishing business and the leisure charter business on the bay, the county health department took under advisement and approved the granting of guidelines to allow these businesses to begin operations. There are more than 6,000 personal recreational vehicles or vessels in the marinas in San Diego Bay. The financial burden of maintaining these vessels is significant, and they need to be able to venture out into the bay and beyond for pleasure and racing. My question to you, why aren't these boaters afforded the same rights as businesses plying the waters of San Diego Bay? The captains of these boats have and take the ultimate responsibility to maintain the safety of their crews and guests on their boats. They are charged with using the same sanitation and health guidelines, including social distancing and face coverings, as well as confirming that no one shows signs of illness during the past 14 days. They are responsible for maintaining the cleanliness of their boats prior to allowing persons on board, and also providing soap and water and or hand sanitizers. My final point, restaurants are permitted to allow patrons to invite non-family guests to sit at their table without wearing face masks. The rules need to be consistent so that the rights of the individuals are maintained. Thank you for your time. And one more comment. I believe that recreational boating on the bay is very, very close to the lake boating. Thank you very much for your time again.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6256.
Hi, this is Amy Peltakian. I represent a community of reopened San Diego and fully reopened communities, about 4,000 San Diegans. We're asking the Board of Supervisors to insist that Dr. Wooten show us the reputable science that requires people to wear masks or requires people to physically distance. It's outlined in HSC Div 105, Part 1, Chapter 3. Will you also, as a Board of Supervisor, demand that she show you the law? Basically, the San Diego Sheriff may take the same position as Riverside and Sacramento, meaning that they're not going to enforce the mask requirement. Until this is done, San Diegans should view this as required or advisable, but not mandatory, just as they have in the other counties. We would also respectfully like to ask that we know, as many speakers before me have stated, that people under 18, there's 0 deaths in California. Why on earth have our playgrounds been shut? Why do they remain shut? And we support Jim Desmond's recommendation to open our playgrounds, unmask our children, and please reject the CDC modifications to our children's schools. Is this just a money grab for funding that will prevent our schools from reopening on time? Masking and isolating our children is a huge mistake that's having mental health difficulties and challenges that have been described. Lastly, please remember that San Diegans realize the only vulnerable communities, and we don't understand today, Dr. Wooten, why you included children in your vulnerable communities. We would like to see, respectfully we ask, we would like to see the scientific data that backs up the isolation, the masks, the social distancing. And we also know the triggers are overcounting. Respectfully we ask, why is the Board of Supervisors tolerating deaths to be overstated? We know that there have been 16 deaths caused by COVID in San Diego County. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6513.
Chairman Cox, supervisors, my name is Cleve Hardacre. I'm a member of the Cortez Racing Association, CRA. CRA's sole function is to organize sailboat racing on San Diego Bay. One of our most popular race series is the Beer Can Series, which typically takes place every Wednesday evening during the summer. This year, we have designated the Beer Can Series as the Corona Series. We would like to inaugurate the Corona Series on July 1st, next week. So my ask is that the county health order include explicit language to permit sailboat racing with sufficient crews to ensure safe and seaman-like boat handling, and that the guidelines that CRA has developed be incorporated within the race rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7400. 7400. We'll move on to 7523.
Good morning. I would first and foremost like to thank the Board of Supervisors for your service to the county and the truly exceptional job you guys have done during these extraordinary circumstances. Seriously, you guys are killing it, and I definitely do not envy y'all's job in this time. My name is McLean Harvey, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Pixter Photo Booths. By volume, we are the largest photo experience company in the country, and we're headquartered right here in San Diego. Pixter participated in over 4,000 events last year, and over 250,000 San Diegans used our product last year. As a result of COVID, over 100 of our employees have lost their jobs. As my colleagues have already mentioned on this call, the event industry was the first to be impacted by COVID, and it is likely that we will be the last. That is why it is imperative that we need your help now. Our revenue is based on weddings, corporate events, and other private events. As my colleagues have already said on this call, our customers plan and book their events months and sometimes years in advance. Because there are no plans or a timeline in place to reopen events in San Diego, our revenue has all but ceased. Come August 1st, when the additional federal unemployment halts, San Diego will be facing a crisis with tens of thousands of event workers out of a job and now unable to pay their bills. Opening private events now will go a long way in ensuring the health of not only my company, but the thousands of small businesses that rely on events in San Diego County. Our industry has plans in place on how to keep our employees and, most importantly, the guests of these events safe. And it is, if there's one industry that knows how to execute a plan flawlessly, it's the event industry. Leaders in this industry have already submitted to you recommendations on guidelines of reopening of events, and I adamantly support them. Board members,
sir, I'm going to ask you
I urge you
wrap up your comments.
Reopen events now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8520. 8520. We will move on to 8552.
Good morning. Catherine Vong, owner of Flora, an event venue in downtown San Diego. Thank you, San Diego County Board of Supervisors, as well as the committee that has tirelessly worked to help our industry, and those on the call today in support of these small businesses. I'd like to take this opportunity to touch on some of the unique business aspects and challenges that COVID-19 presents to the private events industry. First, we are not public events, but invite only, as many have said. Controlled environment events where we know the name of every guest attending and all the guests are self-contained during the duration of the event. This allows us to plan in advance, inform in advance, and exercise safety precautions above and beyond what public businesses can in reality control with random customers. Second, just to touch on the financial implications of delaying any further this industry to open. The preclusion of having private events has forced clients to push postponement or worst case, cancel their events. When a postponement is forced, we have lost out on the original event date and we lose out on selling the future event date in which the event postponed to. A twofold setback and an immense financial blow. Last, our business is not an on-demand business. We are not a restaurant able to sell to-go items. We are not a retailer able to sell our services online. Our clients plan years in advance. We not only have lost planned revenue, we have lost future revenue as the overhang of uncertainty regarding the ability to open or not has reduced inquiry demand for dates as far out as 2023. Because we typically collect an upfront deposit, we lose out on significant cash flow this year. I urge this board to consider these unique differences in our industry and not treat us in a monolith of other public spaces. Given our ability to produce a controlled environment and above and beyond detrimental impact on our industry, I urge you to support reopening privately held events. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8687.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, and thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak. My name is David Thornton, General Manager of Old Town Trolley Tours. I wanted to say a few words of our appreciation for allowing San Diego attractions to reopen, such as the San Diego Zoo, the USS Midway, SeaWorld, Flagship Harbor Tours, and Hornblower Harbor Tours. Old Town Trolley has a comprehensive safety plan in place for our employees and guests. Our reopen date is scheduled for Saturday, July 11th. We look forward to serving San Diego and Coronado again. I applaud all that you have accomplished and the direction in safeguarding the County of San Diego. Thank you again for your opening San Diego attractions.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8687. We'll move on to 8757.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Ashley Bateman, and I am a bride-to-be in San Diego. If any of you have had the opportunity and blessing of having a wedding, I'm sure that you look back at it fondly as one of the best nights of your life. I'm sure you remember your first dance and tearing up during your father's speech. I've been dreaming about my wedding since I was a little girl. You may remember all of the planning that went into it, from the perfect setting to the font on the invitations. My fiance Jeff and I have been planning our wedding for over a year now. The thought of not having a reception really breaks our heart. I understand that many other hearts are broken as well during this time because of the coronavirus. I'm not naive or in denial. I know that this is a serious matter and that everyone must be safe and practical. However, I also know that restaurants, bars, hair salons, and even theme parks have opened with modifications. With the right restrictions in place, a wedding reception could be very similar to dining at a restaurant or going to a bar. With social distancing at tables and plated meals, I have a hard time seeing the difference. In fact, contact tracing couldn't be any simpler with a guest list being made known months in advance. We heard in the presentation today that one of the outbreaks was linked to an outdoor barbecue. I know many other brides who plan on moving forward with their receptions with private residences if they cannot move forward with their venue. This will result in unsafe and unregulated practices and more outbreaks. I request that the guidelines for wedding receptions be discussed and approved. I know that with the intelligent minds of this board, we could figure out a way to make receptions possible while also keeping everyone healthy and safe. Coronavirus has taken much from me, this community, and our country. Please do not let it take away my dream of celebrating my marriage with my friends and family. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8800.
Hi, my name is Greg Howard. My wife and I own a venue in Ramona called the Mount Woodson Castle that has had weddings continuously since the 1920s. They're outdoors. We have almost 15 acres, and the guests can spread out. I listened to all of the talk this morning, and there have been a consistent message, so I won't repeat any of that. I think 2 points I would like to make. One is that I think the goal here should be a level playing field, that it is true that if somebody can't have a wedding at a venue, they're going to find another place to do it. And they'll get a ceremony done one place, they'll go to a restaurant for the dinner, and that's unfair to the people that own the venues and can safely distance the customers. I think the second big point is that the consumers are going to decide in the end what they can live with and what they can't. If they're not seeing a venue that can provide them safety, they won't book it. And if they don't book it now, it won't happen next year. This year is already gone. When we tally up our profit for this year, the revenue is going to be down 75% because all of the weddings happen in the spring and summer. We're now hoping that you'll reopen so that we can begin booking for 2021 and that we won't have a second bad year in a row. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8881.
Hi, my name is Sharon Mintz, the owner of Organic Elements, a wedding florist here in San Diego. Thank you so much for taking the time on this topic. It means the world to us.
The wedding industry is an integral part of San Diego's tourism industry because it boosts additional industries like airlines, restaurants, hotels, and so on. And it has been left in free fall since March, even though its components have been deemed safe. What is a reception but a pop-up restaurant that can be customized to whatever guidelines you require? In-room dining is now safe. Hotels have been deemed safe. The same hotel restaurant that serves the wedding has been deemed safe. So what's the difference? In a restaurant setting, you have several unrelated groups in one space having no accountability to one another. Furniture and surroundings of the environment have been turned over throughout the night. Contact tracing is limited to whatever the restaurant has collected. At a wedding reception, you have a group that is there at the will and expense of a family. This group will collectively feel tremendous pressure and responsibility to adhere to guidelines and not to do anything to be that one person that got the event shut down. Furniture and the surrounding environment are occupied by a single person for the night. Further, you have far more information about each person in the event that contact tracing is required. You have trained event staff, servers, banquet captains, coordinators, and so on to oversee adherence of events. You have a whole wedding industry which will closely monitor itself because it has everything to lose. Most properties have the availability to even move the whole wedding reception outside if that's needed. The bottom line is this: all components of a wedding industry reception have been reopened. You have an entire industry that will bend to any regulations you put forward in order to get back to work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9024.
Hello, my name is Olga Worm, and I am the owner of Becker's Catering. We are in Mission Valley area, and we serve all of San Diego County, and we have been in San Diego County as a family-owned business for over 62 years, and we typically average about 1,500 events a year. First of all, I'd like to thank the supervisors for the Great Plates program. It's the program feeding seniors through restaurants and caterers in San Diego. And we are happy to be on that program. And honestly, that is what is keeping our business alive at this time, since, as everyone else, all of our events have been canceled. Catering companies like ours were the first to be shut down and the last to be allowed to open. But no one notices us because we are always behind the scenes and not visible to the public like restaurants. But we are not restaurants. We must have a group and a venue to do our jobs. We personally employ over 100 people in San Diego who are currently all using up their unemployment dollars and will soon run out. We have not only lost at least 6 months of our business and our busiest season, but we've had to refund hundreds of thousands of dollars in deposits to clients who are, and the clients are afraid to book for any future time for this whole year and who knows when. We believe our services are also essential. We can help by keeping our clients remaining safe at their events, by running the events professionally and with the appropriate controls and safety measures. These events are so much safer than restaurants or beaches or protests or large stores. Please allow us and all of our industry and the small private event industry to get back to work and survive for our employees and our community and the future of paying taxes in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9100.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. My name is Jennifer Hunt, and I'm a local event coordinator. I'm respectfully requesting the freedom to immediately hold small, important life events, such as wedding receptions, while following all the newest CDC gathering considerations, as well as the San Diego Safe On-Site Food and Beverage Plan that was effective on June 12th. A sit-down dinner reception can 100% adhere to that plan. For the sake of not being repetitive, I'm going to skip my summary of those guidelines. But as referenced by a lot of previous callers, we are also seeing a trend that families are now resorting to hosting these events in backyards with little to no regard to safety guidelines. Event professionals should be allowed the ability to use their expertise to create environments that are safe for guests and staff. As an event professional, as a lot of us have talked about, our industry has been severely impacted. Events such as weddings take months to plan. Each week that we do not have timing for opening small planned events affects businesses weeks and months down the road. We've sadly already seen many vendors close their doors because of a huge loss of revenue, coupled with cancellations, refund demands, along with opening timing unknowns. Any continuance of not addressing small event timing will impact countless more businesses, as well as lead to increased private resident celebrations that do not have the capacity or staff to follow safe guidelines. We believe all planned events should be allowed immediately, as there are already clear guidelines that can be followed to keep our guests safe. We thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9262.
Hi there. My name is Rob Smatt. I would just like to start by, appreciating the council for taking our feedback on the matter, and I really do appreciate Amy's much earlier comments with the very lucid, very important list of aspects that make, especially for weddings and for outdoor events, that make them no different than a restaurant and those matters that have already been discussed. And I also appreciate Ashley, who just spoke, joining me. I'm not a hotel owner. I don't hold a seat on the Chamber of Commerce. I don't have an economic stake in today's issue. I'm a fiance. I am going to marry a woman who I love very much, and we're very excited. And the thing that we don't have right now is a plan. And I know how aware the council is of economic impacts and of the bottom line and the balance that tax revenue holds. But what the council may not realize is the emotional impact. And so that's why today I would just ask that the council really, again, approve this measure and take it to the governor and just simply ask for a plan. My fiance has gone through a roller coaster, as have I, as she and I navigate this path of the weddings on, the weddings off, the weddings on, the weddings off. And we just like to know. And as Ashley mentioned, and the others, we'll go to whatever regulations are required. If it's she and I and our parents in, the La Jolla Women's Club outdoor area, we'll have it, because it's not about the material possessions for us. It's not about the economy for us. It's about a special event that's a once in a lifetime thing. So I would encourage a plan as soon as possible from the governor for weddings and events like we've been talking about. And I appreciate my time. And again, I also support you, Dr. Wooten, and thank you for your work. And no matter what we think of you, I hope no one will be doxing you in the future, person to person. Thank you for your hard work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9800.
Good morning. Tracy Amernick, VP of Sales and Events for the Cone Restaurant Group. We seek clear direction from you on reopening and guidelines for hosting planned private events. Recommendations on safe COVID guidelines that have been presented to you. We are in support of them. For months, every event has been canceled and postponed, some multiple times. Future events are in jeopardy. Clients are signing contracts and providing deposits. Without an immediate plan and specific direction, the special event industry is at a standstill. It is causing huge stress on clients and employees. We need to be able to host safe gatherings of wedding ceremonies, planned corporate events, conferences, hosted private social and nonprofit events. We are career professionals. We all design experiences and can accept any challenge. This is just another challenge. We need timeframes for the different group sizes. We have to have information from our clients. If we don't open soon, we are destroying what we all work so hard to build. We need information on capacities and events inside and out based on following social distancing guidelines that have been provided. This is for mid-size events as you recommend. There will be a window for booking events several weeks to years out, especially corporate events and convention groups that we all survive on. Every day that goes by without a green light to open causes a delay for us in an industry that has been crippled. Businesses all around us continue to reopen to the public and with great success as they adhere to guidelines. But as mentioned, there are other businesses that were reopened and some that are open that shouldn't have opened, and they are not following guidelines.
Without a doubt, they are much more of a threat than a planned event following the standards. Planners, event professionals, and caterers have the ability to coordinate COVID-safe requirements with venues and work with event hosts that are willing to follow the rules once provided. We will keep our team members and guests safe. We need you to support and trust us as professionals to plan and execute safe events. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9907.
Good morning, County Supervisors and distinguished guests. My name is Debbie Lowry, and I'm the General Manager of Shade Tree Gardens private event venue located in northern San Diego County. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, my CEO and I were unable to open our brand new startup venue, which was slated to open in fall 2019. Therefore, I'm calling in to voice my support for the safe reopening guidelines for meetings, weddings, and events, which were developed by my peers, Ms. Amy Eucliton, Mr. Zafar Dejani, Mr. Michael Esposito, and Mrs. Amanda McPhail. I echo all of the public comments made before me, and I implore you to reopen meetings, weddings, and events in their entirety. As the GM of Shade Tree Gardens private event venue, we will work hard to ensure the safety of our guests. Meetings, weddings, and events are my life, and my life is currently on hold. Please help me make my entrepreneurial dream of owning and running a private event venue in my hometown of San Diego, California come true. I urge you to fully support the reopening of meetings, weddings, and events. Thank you for your time and your support of the hospitality industry as a whole. Thank you.
7400. Last call for 7400. And final call for 8687. 8687. Okay, we will move on to 7898.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Heteru, and I am a descendant and inheritor of American slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, racially discriminatory zoning, and numerous violations of the 14th Amendment and Title VII. That is, I am a foundational Black American, otherwise known as FBA. I am also a resident of the 4th District of the county, representing myself as well as my FBA neighbors, two of whom have signed forms designating me to speak on their behalf regarding this matter, Debbie Bolton and Johnetta Coleman. I somehow missed item 3 regarding funding for housing, but as we know, homeless persons are at and pose a much greater risk to contracting and spreading COVID-19. During the last board meeting on June 2nd, I phoned in to request extreme swift action to resolve the physical and economic health problems unique to the foundational Black Americans who have 1/10 the wealth to fall back on the people I'm hearing calling, both the sheltered and unsheltered, posed by the numerous unsheltered persons at and near the corner of Euclid and Imperial Avenue. I've not seen such a high concentration of homeless persons in residential areas any place that I've traveled in the county. Since that time, I have taken note of a June 16, 2020 agenda item on the San Diego City Council for the acceptance of the County of San Diego and Regional Task Force of the Homeless COVID-19 State Emergency Homelessness Grant in an amount not to exceed about $1.6 million. It was said by a council member to have been coordinated by the city, the county, and Sandag unusually swiftly. I really appreciated hearing that, while also understanding that what is deemed swift depends on the current circumstance of a person. And while I also appreciate the transparency of the many documents attendant to matters that address homelessness directly or indirectly, it shouldn't be necessary for constituents desperately pleading for help to understand the matrix of funding, its terminology, etc. Familiarity of this complex process should be no more necessary for we foundational Black Americans, sheltered and unsheltered, at and near the corners of Euclid and Imperial Avenues than it is for patients visiting at a hospital emergency room with chest pains to understand all the terminology and metrics of tests administered in order to receive appropriately rapid and effective care. So I continue to plead for the coordination of such urgent assistance for myself and for my neighbors who are descendants, as I had said earlier. And we have endured lives plagued by uncountable unjust assaults to our physical and economic health, inherited and experienced. I urge you to please facilitate the expedition of the housing for these unsheltered persons, again with extreme swiftness and iteration. I have heard our neighborhood euphemistically referred to as a starter neighborhood. This is one of the ways that systemic racism shows up.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to summarize your comments.
Well, I will conclude them there. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0715.
Bianconi.
Could you please restate your name for the record?
Arlette Bianconi.
Thank you.
The current recreational sports reopening, physical distancing, and safety plan, practice and drills excludes adults. Per recreational sports insurance, adults are categorized as 16 years old and up. There are thousands of older teenagers and adults who are frustrated and stressed by the sheltering in place. Being able to get on the field, kick and throw a ball, and run is important to their mental and physical health. Restaurants, bars, nail and hair salons, and fitness facilities are open and require much closer contact than 24 people on a football field in constant movement. Adult players pose no more of a threat of spreading COVID-19 than youth players. Youth attend practices with their parents, siblings, playmates who are driven to the field together and wait at the practice while the practice is conducted. The children not engaged in sports activities are playing together and sharing equipment with other children. Older teenagers and adults either walk or drive themselves to the field and do not have family members or friends waiting and watching the practice to end. Will you please include adult participation in San Diego's currently reopened sports physical distancing and safety plan and practice? Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is 9696.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Lee, and I'm a catering, Defined Catering, and a wedding planner for Win Austin Events. I am also a bride who has personally been affected by the closure of the event sector due to COVID. And I've had to push my wedding twice this year and have lost thousands of dollars due to the uncertainty of when private events will be allowed. Our company has furloughed 90% of our employees, and we have lost thousands in deposits and in future events for this year. Many of my fellow colleagues are facing the same. Other industries such as theme parks, restaurants, bars, gyms, and many others have been reopening, but we still do not have a timeline of when wedding receptions and private events will open. We need a time frame and guidelines in advance to provide our clients. I know that this may not be an immediate reopening, but as my fellow colleagues have mentioned, our clients need to make decisions on their receptions and private social events right now as they plan years in advance. Please help our industry to reopen safely by asking Governor Newsom to allow San Diego to reopen private events. We passionately urge you to allow us and trust us as professionals to help manage and safely execute events. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. And that concludes the public testimony on this item, Chairman Cox.
Very good. We appreciate all the public testimony. We do have before us the staff recommendations, which is 4 different recommendations that they are recommending, which includes accepting the update and ratifying the actions of the Chief Administrative Officer, establishing an appropriation of $30 million in the Health and Human Services Agency to support efforts associated with the COVID-19 emergency, and also taking any other actions necessary to address the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation?
I would so move.
All right, and is there a second?
Supervisor Desmond here. I'd like to add a amendment.
Can we get a motion on the floor first, and then I certainly would entertain your amendment. So I'll second the motion. So go ahead and
okay, thank you.
Your comments. Okay.
It's I think appropriate today, particularly with all the speakers talking, a majority of them talking about weddings and things like that. Today, my beautiful wife Carrie and I, it's our 36th wedding anniversary. So June is a very popular time for weddings. So didn't realize I'd be spending it here today. But and also our son and daughter, future daughter-in-law, have put a wedding date out. And the first date they were able to get was October 3rd of 2021. So they were able to finally book a venue, but that far out. But I want to say thank you very much, for the presentation. All of our vulnerable, clearly need, and need the protections that were put in place and that Ms. Wooten or Dr. Wooten talked about earlier. At the beginning of the pandemic, our public health officials, told us the goal was to stabilize our health system, make sure we have enough hospital beds, secure a healthy supply of medical equipment, including ventilators, and to protect our vulnerable. We've done all that, and if you look at our hospital numbers, they have decreased dramatically. On May 5th, we had 37 people admitted to the hospital, and last week we had 8. And our hospital numbers continue to flatten. Over the last few weeks, we've opened up more and more businesses, and we knew there's going to be some speed bumps. We have hit a couple, but we're better off using a scalpel than a grenade to address some of these issues as they. And the focus, we need to focus on the exact problems that identify, where we are today, and which is why tracing and testing has been very important. We need to watch very carefully and take seriously any outbreak, but that doesn't mean a blanket stop of the economy. One of the things I just want to point out is that, we've done a lot more testing lately, and with the tracing, we've done a lot more focused testing, and that has increased our numbers. As Dr. Wooten pointed out earlier, that we had a 71% increase in the previous 5 days than the 5 days before that of the number of tests. So with that increased testing came increased positives with tracing. Our hospitalizations are continuing to decrease. And I'd like to see more controlled and safe gathering and business opportunities in San Diego County. So with our unemployment figures, they're still at 30%. So I'd like to amend the motion, or I guess to add to the motion, that we send a letter to the governor under the chair's signature, again, stating that we would like guidance made available for opening the following businesses: wedding receptions, hotel meetings and conferences, and private planned events. I'd also like to reiterate in the letter that we would, of the already requested businesses from the governor, and that was churches to their full social distancing capacities and theme parks, Legoland. I'd also like to ask for guidance for street fairs, playgrounds, and team competitions. Ultimately, our county health official is going to have to, give the blessing to that. I'm hoping that our community outbreaks numbers, by the time we maybe hear back from the governor, have normalized. We might be able to use some of this guidance that we receive from the governor's office, if we receive it, towards opening up some of these businesses. We've only got one meeting in July, and so I'd like the scheduled right now in July. So I don't want us to overreact on a day or two spike. Watching the data and trends, we can target those parts of San Diego that need the additional attention, but we don't want to punish arguably safer uses like wedding and special event venues where they have guest lists, they have distancing, they have permits, they have licenses. We got nightclubs open. And bars and restaurants, and where we don't take names, and I think these entities are worthy of opening. So, just to repeat, I'd like to ask that we send a letter to the governor asking for guidance on the following businesses: wedding receptions, hotel meetings and conferences, and planned private events. Opening up what we previously asked for: churches to full distancing capacity and theme parks, and guidance for street fairs, playgrounds, and team competitions. That'd be my addition. Thank you.
Okay, that's a motion to add that to the existing motion recommendations. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, Supervisor Gaspar, a second to that motion. Any?
Just a follow-up to that, Chairman. I want to point out the community is starting to pick up, and they did obviously today, and many of the comments that were made on lots of inconsistencies that are out there. I think it's very confusing to the public when we have certain numbers of people permitted here, but not there. For example, you could go to church with 100 people, but it's hard to explain to parents why you couldn't play a soccer game with an equal number of people. I think what we need to incorporate the most are the requirements of the public health officer across the board in any industry business We know that there needs to be a safety plan, protocols that are developed. Every single business sector and opportunity has a fully developed safety plan at this point. But the supervisor pointed out in his comments that it takes a lot of planning, especially for these corporate events and things to move forward. I was just meeting with San Diego Tourism Authority this week, and they pointed out how devastating it is to have zero guidance or direction on even a target date, a month that we could anticipate that some of these conferences could return to the San Diego region. And obviously these conferences and such are returning to other parts of the country. They've worked extensively on distancing plans, taking advantage of all of the space that we currently have in the convention center, for example, now, where we're able to socially distance a very vulnerable population there in the convention center, and we've done it successfully. So the most important thing is that all of these industries, all of these sectors have those protocols in place. They need to be implemented. My concern is that the more time that passes by, that we aren't actively pushing to make sure that we resolve some of the inconsistencies, that we are going to miss out on entire sports seasons. For example, our schools, many of the coaches have contacted me now. High school football can't continue even in the fall if they can't start with some conditioning now. They've been able to get back practicing for some club organizations, but the schools are very hesitant to restore these opportunities because they don't know what it's going to look like later on down the road. So I think it's proper for us to continue to advocate for San Diego specifically. Our only way to do that right now is to the governor. We can be more restrictive than the governor, as we've all learned, but not less restrictive. So we need to make a compelling case for our community on behalf of our community and all of these sectors that are ready to safely move forward. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you can't host a backyard barbecue safely with a controlled setting and people that you know, and that seems like a contact tracer's dream, as opposed to going out where you could visit the zoo, for example, and come into contact with lots of people that you have no idea who they are. It makes no sense that you can't host a couple people in your backyard, but you can take those same people into a restaurant and you can sit with them in a restaurant setting where you have even more exposure to wait staff, bussers, cooks, etc. So we have to resolve these inconsistencies. Safety is the key. I'll continue to promote safely reopening these opportunities in our community, and we are ready to do it.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Supervisor Fletcher first, and then Supervisor Jacob.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, it's no surprise I'm not supportive of this effort. We have now, time and again, gone through this drill of sending the governor a letter to demand expedited reopenings, and I didn't support the previous ones. But it is a bit startling that the same board that unanimously opposed a series of triggers, and these triggers were unanimously opposed to be an early warning indicator that perhaps things are not going the way they ought to be going. And we put in place these triggers to warn us of significant increases in cases. And we have hit the community outbreaks trigger, not just Thursday, but we hit it Thursday, and then we hit it Friday, and then we hit it Saturday, and we hit it Sunday, and then we hit it Monday. And my guess is we're going to hit it again today. So we have 6 consecutive days of 7 or more new community outbreaks in the preceding 7 days. That should be concerning to us. We also have had the highest number of totals in cases. Now, we have had an increase in testing, which is why we look at the percentage of positives as the guiding principle surrounding how we're doing. And we went from averaging well under 3% of positive per day to a few days ago, more than doubling that to 7%, yesterday, 5%. And so we are seeing increases. Now, hospitalizations have not increased significantly. They've been trending up, trending down. The last few days, they've been trending down. But we also know that hospitalizations are a lagging indicator that come after significant increases in community spread. And so whether we're looking at what's happening in other counties in California or whether we're looking at what's happening in other states, I think that the guidance to go responsibly, to go slow, and this is a time period where the notion that we would come in and add a significant number of indoor gatherings to what is already open when we're in the midst of tremendous instability in the numbers we have now, I do not support it, and I don't think it's a responsible approach. And so I'm not supportive of this effort.
Okay. Supervisor Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what Supervisor Desmond has outlined, I mean, it's a big push to do further reopenings. However, I'm not sure it's a wise thing to do. And I want to ask Dr. Wooten a question, but to preface that, the other reopenings that we have submitted a letter to the governor on, I know the phase 2 expansion and what we did with phase 3, we had our local public health officers support. And even the last reopening that I supported, that Supervisor Desmond brought before the board, there was no objection by our public health officer. But I heard earlier, probably a couple hours ago, but I heard earlier in the presentation that Dr. Wooten said that she was going to be curtailing any additional reopenings. So that means no more reopenings. So I would like to ask Dr. Wooten, and I know our CAO also has a team that looks at these protocols. I've met with some of these groups and they've done a good job. They make good arguments and there may well be some inconsistency, but I'm not sure we're in a position to ask the governors for something that locally we cannot approve by the health standards and what's been laid out by our public health officers. So Dr. Wooten, could you please respond?
Thank you for this great opportunity, Supervisor Jacob. What I stated was that at the present moment, looking at the community outbreaks, the number of community outbreaks that we have, we could not recommend any opening in the next week or the next couple of weeks. We don't know what's coming down the pike, however, from the state. So it depends on what they recommend, but in terms of opening up broad industries in the next week or so, if we continue with the community outbreaks in the same manner that they have been occurring over the past several days. As Supervisor Fletcher stated, we had several. On June 16th, there were 3 outbreaks. On the 17th, 2. On the 18th, 2. 0 on Friday and Saturday, and on Sunday we had 3. And for the 22nd, we are going to have at least 1 more. And we may have more tomorrow and the day after that. So if we are still consistently above 7 community outbreaks, which is the trigger, it would be ill-fated to recommend continued opening during that same time period.
Let me ask you another question, because we had some, in the protests, there were large gatherings of people. And then we've also taken action to do quite a bit of reopening. And most of it's gone well, but I know there are some businesses that are not abiding by the health standards. Do you think, Dr. Wooten, that we have seen the results in terms of the COVID outbreaks as a result of those gatherings, the protests, and also the reopenings that have occurred so far? Is it too early to determine that?
Well, if staff could go back and show the epi curve that we have in the slide deck. I talked about during the presentation where we peaked, our first peak was about April 20th through May 8th. Well, since that period, with the reopening of various industries and other events happening, some of our numbers are higher than that peaked period. And we anticipated that we would have additional cases with the opening up. That is expected, but also looking at the number of outbreaks is very important for us to consider as well. So I just think this week is a critical week in looking at the number of additional outbreaks that we will have in addition to what we've already reported. And as you can see here in the period just before the 14-day incubation period, which we know we will have more cases. There was a peak period just before that, which is higher than the first major peak that we have there. And again, though, we are testing more. And if we test more, we will find additional cases that are in the community. The testing doesn't increase the new cases. These cases are out there, and because we are testing, we are finding these cases.
That's a little more than what I needed.
Okay.
My question I thought was pretty simple. That, you know, it sounds like what you said in answer to my question is we have not yet seen the full results of the reopenings that have been allowed so far and the gatherings at the protests. Would that be a correct statement or not?
Well, it depends on, we've had a lot of protests in the past 2 weeks or so. Again, all of these factors are contributing to
I know,
yes.
Yeah, I understand that. Could
So
you just
no, Supervisor Jacob, we have not seen the full outcome of all of the events that have occurred in the past 3 weeks.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to try to get at, that we have not seen the full results of what we've experienced with reopenings or with the gatherings at the protests yet. And I'm concerned about that. As much as I would like to support what Supervisor Desmond is saying, ask the governor for guidance. Frankly, it's not going to do any good unless our public health officer is on board. And I don't hear that today. I hear just the opposite. And I have always erred on the side of safety, particularly when it comes to public health. And we do have, as a board, a responsibility to protect the public health and safety of the people in this region. And that is one of our core responsibilities. So, Supervisor, as much as I'd like to support you on this, I cannot at this time. I think let's give it a little more time to see the effects of what we've already allowed, and then that we haven't allowed in the gatherings with protests. And then I think it would be wiser to make that determination and the request that you're making of the governor. I'm really, really concerned. Even the rest of this week, what we're going to be seeing in terms of outbreaks. And I think we need to watch that very, very carefully and to make sure as we continue that it is done safe. We don't want to dial back. And that's another fear. If things go bad, then we're not moving forward anymore. We're dialing back. So I can excuse me, cannot support the motion at this time.
Okay, we have a request from Supervisor Desmond and then Supervisor Gaspar.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the comments made, but I'm kind of surprised, Supervisor Jacob, you're the one who made the motion for local support or local control. And that's all I'm trying to enhance is more local control here. I'm not asking for these, and I want to point out that, you know, we had anomalies of numbers of tests within the last 5 days. We had over 10,000 tests on last Thursday and Friday that came in as batches that were collected over a period of time, but were only counted on those days. So also there were many private settings that are occurring that are causing these community outbreaks. They're in private settings. They're not all from businesses that reopened, and many of the businesses were open during the only the essential phase. So if we ruled out these private settings, we'd be below the 7 at this point in time. I'm not asking for that we open these businesses. I'm asking for the guidance and the guidelines to do so. I am not asking Wilma Wooten to go outside of what she's promised of saying if we don't have these triggers met, we can't open. But possibly by the time we get these guidelines from the governor, if we get them, maybe our numbers have gotten better, and we will have seen, maybe it's going to be a week or more that we see anything from the governor. Then we will have more time to review see if there's a bump in hospitals, see if there's a bump in community outbreaks. In hand, as a Boy Scout, I learned be prepared. And so I want to be prepared with this next group of businesses that we're able to open once our numbers get normalized. I'm not asking for them to open. I'm not even asking Dr. Wooten to open them at this point in time until she is satisfied. So, you know, I just want to point out that I'm trying to get local control here sooner rather than later. And again, we have one meeting scheduled for July. So if we're going to take a look at this, our one meeting in July, and then we're not going to come back until whatever the first week or two in August. So I'm trying to be ready if the numbers look good. And to be honest with you, I think San Diego County has been doing a phenomenal job. And I hate to admit it, but even the masks that Wilma Wooten has imposed upon us have been working. And I'm willing to, you know, hear all the negative complaints about masks as long as we can keep open. So I'm just trying to keep local control. I'm trying to get us prepared and ready in case the numbers normalize, because the testing numbers are all over the place right now. We're getting batches in and things like that. Once the testing numbers kind of normalize, and then maybe we'll get normalized numbers on the triggers, we'll be ready and we can move ahead sooner rather than later. And as the hotel people had pointed out, even the wedding people, they're going to lose this entire season, the summer season, if we aren't prepared to open when we're able to.
Mr. Chairman, it's
okay. Supervisor Gaspar.
Thank you. I spot on, Jim, in your comments. Nobody is suggesting that we move the head of our public health officer. In fact, we have an inability to do it. The public health officer under this emergency declaration, under this structure, calls the shots. We don't have the ability to move ahead of her blessing to do so. We have never moved ahead of her blessing to do so. So all of this opening has moved forward with the permission, with the blessing of our public health officer. And listen, Supervisor Jacob, I agree. We have to closely monitor that data. It's very concerning to me, and my eyes are glued to that data at all times, because that helps call the shots. We unanimously supported, I think Supervisor Fletcher misspoke, we didn't unanimously oppose the triggers. We unanimously supported those triggers in place today. And no one has suggested that we change those triggers. They are what they are at this point. But a big obstacle, a big barrier, a big slowdown point has been a waiting game for the governor. Once the governor releases his guidance, look at what happens back in our community. Everybody scrambles. And even though he gives the permission to move forward, and even when our public health officer gives us the green light, it's days, if not weeks, before you see these opportunities restored in our community. There are still restaurants that are not open because they're not quite ready yet. So again, it's about adequately preparing for these future opportunities, but nobody is moving forward if our metrics suggest we can't. If those triggers are prompted, if the public health officer is not comfortable with it, nothing happens. So again, I just want to reinforce what Jim did, that it's best to restore our local control so that when San Diego is ready, San Diego can move forward, and we're not waiting for permission again from the governor. Thanks.
Yeah, I believe, in just a second, I believe the Chief Administrative Officer would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you letting me jump in here for a minute. I just want to make sure that you have a point of clarification. We have been working closely with many of the callers that were on the phone today, particularly in the events area, and we have gone through their criteria and made some suggestions which they have absolutely put into their protocols. So we have been working closely with them so that the minute those guidances are determined that they are clear and the state adopts something, we would be ready to implement if the conditions here in San Diego allowed that. So we will be ready to implement when those guidances are issued on these various aspects, these various sectors, because of the pre-work that we are doing. We just now need to make sure that those guidances get issued and that the circumstances here in San Diego County would allow us to move forward, and that would be Wilma's call at that particular time. But for right now, we are continuing to work on those guidances. with the various sectors. We have sector calls regularly. We've had some additional calls specifically with the events communities, the way we did with the hotel communities before that, the way we did with sports groups before that. So we are actively preparing so that we would be ready to go if the conditions are such and the guidances are issued. I just want to make that clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things, and Helen, thank you, that's helpful. And I think what's on the record now is that we would not be moving forward unless we get our local health officer. Supervisor Desmond, just to correct you, yes, I initiated the local control, but it was working with our public health officer. So it wasn't just blanket local control, Katie bar the door, we do anything. So I think Supervisor Gaspar clarified, I think sufficiently, and as long as we're not looking at an opening date, but we're just looking for guidance from the governor, and as our CAO indicated, then we would be ready, and that they have been working with these industries to put the proper safeguards in place, and that we are closely monitoring the triggers, and there's always a chance that those triggers could send off the bells to dial back, and then only then we would know. So if your motion is ask for guidance, and then whatever guidance and whatever we do in the future, we would adhere to our public health officer in terms of moving forward on any of these sectors, I will support your motion.
I think given the fact that the motion is asking for guidance, I'm going to support the amendment that's before us. And I do that with the realization that we are still relying on our public health director to tell us when the time is right for these other businesses to open. The guidance from the governor is good to have, but as has been pointed out, we certainly can be more restrictive, and we may in many cases be more restrictive because of what's actually happening on the ground here in San Diego County. So I'm going to support the amendment. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to say that I'm sorry I wasn't very clear in the motion, but that Supervisor Jacob, that exactly as Supervisor Gaspar had explained it, was exactly my motion, that we aren't going to do anything without our county health officers blessing. So that's
okay. Would you restate it? You restate the motion then, so we know what we're voting on? We're asking for guidance for the following businesses.
Guidance for the following businesses.
But there'd be no reopenings without the approval of the local public health officer?
That's something exactly
like that?
it.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay, sorry I didn't put that in there, but that's what I meant.
Okay, is there any discussion or question in regards to the amendment to the motion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
No.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes with Supervisor Fletcher voting aye, all other supervisors being present and voting. Supervisor Fletcher voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Potter. Now the motion is amended. Is there any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. Chairman Cox?
Aye.
Supervisor Jacob?
Aye.
Supervisor Gaspar?
Aye.
Supervisor Fletcher?
No.
Vice Chairman Desmond?
Aye.
Chairman Cox, that motion passes with Supervisor Fletcher voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Very good. That brings us to a time of 1:30. I'm going to, or a little bit past 12:30, I should say. I'm going to suggest that we adjourn until 1:30 and come back and pick up items 26, 27, and 28. If there's no objection to that, we will go into recess until 1:30.